I just found out my ex-wife is feeding my kids turpentine. I found this out, like I do most things about life with their mother, through the kids, M7 and F5, as communication has been pretty much non-existent between the ex and I since our split 6 years ago. Before anyone jumps to conclusions, no, I don't ever press my kids for information. I've worked very hard to establish an uninhibited, open, no topic is off limits type of relationship with my kids. Even though I've only got them every other weekend, I want them to feel comfortable enough to fully express themselves and speak their mind freely around me. This has led to several discoveries about certain aspects of their life that their mother has asked them not to reveal to me, something I am very much against. I don't believe any child should have to hold secrets between their parents, it isn't their responsibility and is something I would never ask of them. That being said, they've come out with nuggets of wisdom such as we shouldn't be drinking tap water because the government puts chemicals in there that makes us docile and obedient. Santa isn't real but Jesus is and the Bible is 100% fact, controversial topic, I understand, and most recently that the government says turpentine is poisonous but it is actually good for you. What the hell do I do here? If I speak to my ex about this, or even let slip that I know it's going on, she isn't going to have an honest conversation about it with me and I fear that she'll just press the kids even harder to keep things from me. I don't want their heads filled with this rubbish but I feel so powerless to stop this. All I can do is try to teach them to think critically but that is only going to be so effective when they're getting told all this nonsense is fact. Help. Edit. I spoke to my children about it and recorded the conversation to ensure there was no confusion about what was being said. They were being fed a spoonful of turpentine every day by their nana for the past 4 weeks while they were all away on holidays, but there is zero chance my ex wasn't aware this was happening. Definitely turpentine. 100% pure gum turpentine, my boy said the bottle read. The distilled stuff, he said. They even started singing that Mary Poppins song, a spoonful of sugar helps the turpentine go down. Feel like I'm in an alternate timeline. I just found out my ex-wife is feeding my kids turpentine. Update on the situation, the kids have been medically assessed. They've had blood work done, testing for liver and kidney function, as well as any other abnormalities, and have undergone some minor testing. Thankfully, everything has come back clear and they seem to be happy and in good health, apart from my daughter being a little upset about being jabbed with needles. There were, however, some very concerning statements made by my kids to the doctors who screened them, both with and without any family present. Everything said has been transcribed and documented in their discharge papers. CPS has since been informed of the situation. The situation has been reported to the police and a medical release statement has been filed with them. They told me they would remain in contact with CPS and wait for their lead. The kids are legally staying within the care of myself and my family until further notice from Child Services. At this point in time, I've had no contact with my ex since this all came about. I have a tip on a great family law legal representative whom I will contact in the very near future to discuss my steps moving forward, and about making a claim for primary custodial care. My family fully supports this decision and we are all still incredibly shocked about this whole scenario. I am on the verge of having an absolute meltdown but things actually seem okay for now. My kids are safe. I couldn't be more grateful for how supportive my family and friends have been over the last couple of days. Thank you to everyone who gave me their advice and support. I appreciate every one of you. Please do not feed any of your children turpentine, no matter how many times they ask you for that damn toy. Boyfriend's perspective, I'm pregnant and craving bananas. My boyfriend refuses to buy them for me. Hey, it's Lyle, Jess' boyfriend. First of all, I want to address this refuse to get treatment or medication bullcrap. I was diagnosed with ADHD as a child. It took until college to realize I needed to adapt things to how my brain worked rather than slap a medication over it and try to pretend I'm neurotypical. I adapt well in life. I graduated on the dean's list in college and I'm doing well at my dream job and thriving as a ND person. This medication BS started almost immediately after we found out Jess was pregnant a month ago. It wasn't approached like, hey Kyle, I noticed these things that seem to be hard for you. I think you need help with that. I was instead first asked if my ADHD was going to spread to the baby, and second told that I should probably take this as a chance to get it under control, because she didn't want the baby to grow up dealing with any problems. Now let's get to the sensory aversions. I have been through therapy to manage it. I can now, after years, touch paper towels without my gums hurting. But bananas I just cannot deal with. People who aren't ND and don't deal with sensory aversions don't understand that it is literally physically painful in many cases, and genuinely makes me sick. I don't make myself throw up. My body naturally reacts like that. Jess has told me many times how embarrassed she is by it and how it affects her, and her solution is exposure therapy. What she doesn't realize is that's essentially the same thing as tormenting me. There are some cases where I've realized it's just a little too common, but bananas are not common enough for me to sit there and torment myself just to make her feel less embarrassed next time she wants me to try a smoothie her sister makes and lie about the ingredients. Finally, other details I think are important. Jess was binge watching a show on Netflix and wanted me to bring her a banana while she watched the show on the bed. We are in a one-bedroom apartment and the smell would probably be there at least for a day. We had gotten in an argument about my ADHD and me not having meds the day before, so this didn't seem like a sudden craving but more a cruel jab since it was still tense. She wasn't too sick to get up. She was too lazy and made, and told me to go cut it for her because I just want to watch my show in peace. I'll admit, I snapped when she insisted I cut the banana, and do just this one thing for our child to show I care, as if she didn't go out and quit her job pretty much immediately without even telling me, and I'm now dealing with all the household expenses while she shops. I've also been caring for most of the house, because she's already claimed to be too pregnant for morning sickness. My rude mom made my pregnant girlfriend sleep on the floor, so I will never let her see her granddaughter ever. My girlfriend, Rose, and I have been together for 4 years and she is 5 months pregnant with our first child. My mom seemed to really like Rose, or at the very least tolerated her, but after we announced that we were expecting, Something definitely switched in her. She has become extremely rude and disrespectful towards my girlfriend. She makes passive-aggressive comments at every chance she gets. I've had to take a step back from my mother until she fixes her behavior. Rose had gone to visit her family who lives far out of town. It was a very last-minute trip, and she drove herself to the destination and back. Unfortunately, at around 6 p.m., her car broke down and she was forced to pull over. Fortunately, my brother, Chris, who's great with cars and lives about an hour and a half from where Rose was stranded, was willing to pick her up and sort everything out. I was out of the country, so I'm grateful that my brother sorted everything out for her. Chris moved back in with my mom about a year ago. Obviously, the situation wasn't the best, especially considering the tension between Rose and my mom that exists for no particular reason. But I hoped my mom could put her pettiness aside for at least a night. It was too late for Chris to drive Rose back home, so my brother told her that he would drive her back tomorrow morning. An arrangement that my mom seems to not like, but one that she managed to keep her mouth shut about. My girlfriend tells me Rose helps prepare dinner, wash up, and actually engage in a decent conversation with my mom for the first time in ages. However, they mostly avoid each other. Chris goes to bed earlier, leaving my mom and Rose. My mom lives in a 2-bedroom apartment, and since both bedrooms were taken, Rose assumed that she would be sleeping on the couch. She apparently assumed wrong. My mom gives Rose the thinnest blanket ever and basically screams at her, telling her that she has to sleep on the floor to not ruin her couch. She tells Rose to make do with the pillows on the couch and the blanket that provides zero warmth. Rose thought about protesting but ultimately decided against it. According to Rose, my mom kept opening her door to check if she was sleeping on the couch, so she couldn't even try to sleep on the couch. At 5 a.m., Chris found Rose on the couch and let her sleep on his bed. He ended up telling me, but told me to not make a big fuss out of it. I did the exact opposite. I called my mom, very angry, and told her that she was disrespecting her so badly. She tried to defend herself by saying that she didn't harm the baby, and it's okay for pregnant women to sleep on the floor, but I refused to hear any of it. I will never let her see her granddaughter ever.
Am I the a-hole for divorcing my husband because he made fun of my weight? My husband and I have been married for 3 years now, together for 5. Our marriage isn't perfect, but we make it work. We both were fairly in shape when we first got together, but I gained a lot of weight when we had our kid and haven't since then. We are all Indians and it's somewhat acceptable to pull each other's legs. Mostly our family does it and there isn't any malicious intent. So my husband routinely teases me about my weight gain, but I know he loves me and I try not to take it too personally. Even I tease him about how long he takes in the shower and how obsessed he is with styling himself in front of a mirror as a guy. My husband has quite the following on Instagram. He usually posts a lot of reels and it's usually harmless and fun stuff. I was scrolling through Instagram and saw a reel about me, how much he loves me and all. I thought that was sweet. Immediately afterwards, I saw another one. This one was also about me. It was a picture from 5 years ago versus pictures now of both of us. With a background voiceover saying, before the wedding, my responsibility was for 55 kilograms, now it is 75 kilograms and it keeps on increasing. This was followed by a cackling sound. I don't know what happened, but a switch in me flipped. I felt humiliated and ashamed of myself in a way I had never felt before. I felt anger and hurt at my husband for something that was normal ribbing for both of us. My husband was away on a work trip so I didn't contact him. I went through some Reddit advice for similar situations and most people advised serving divorce papers, so should I go ahead with it? Cut to present, I left divorce papers on his nightstand and went to my friend's house 2 days ago. The entire family, including him and my parents, have been hurling insults at me for bringing shame to their family. They told me there's no concept of divorce in our culture and I should just keep my mouth shut on these feminist things and come home to tend to my family because as a wife and a mother, that's what I'm supposed to do. They say that nobody will marry me because I am trying to be a divorcee. My husband said that he didn't think I'd snap at him like that and thought this warrants a conversation if it really hurts so bad.
Have you ever had a gut feeling that a child was going to grow up to do something horrible even though they seemed sweet, normal, and well-behaved? About 50 years ago my parents bought a house in a brand new subdivision. Literally the year before the area was nothing but trees and a creek. The neighborhood was mostly young couples with small kids, so my younger sisters had tons of playmates. A family moved in at the end of the block and had a daughter the same age as my 8-year-old sister. V had a Eddie Haskell vibe. No kid could be that polite to adults, but what I found unusual was that she would befriend a girl to the point that they were inseparable and then suddenly drop them and go on to the next kid. My sister was not interested in being B's friend, but B would come over the house and spin a sad tale to Mom about how much she wanted Sis to be her friend. Mom, God love her, always saw the best in everyone, and though she would never force Sis to be friends with B, Mom let her come to the house when she wanted. That all changed the following spring. In the spring the migratory birds came back, and since all the trees had been cut down the birds started building nests in unusual places. Mom noticed a nest with 3 eggs in our mailbox. The mailman indulged Mom and hand-delivered our mail to the door. The whole block was involved and everyone waited for the eggs to hatch. On a Friday the eggs hatched, don't remember what kind of bird, and all the kids gathered around the mailbox except B. She stood across the street and stared at Sis and her friends. Saturday morning Mom and I were leaving for work when we saw the mailbox laying crushed in the street and the nest torn apart. I looked down and saw 3 mangled birds crushed on our front step. Mom was crying and I was mad. I knew who did it, but the police said there was nothing they could do without a witness. B's family had the nerve to say it was probably my cat who did it. B bragged about killing the birds, but the kids were too scared of her to tell their parents. She was also forbidden by Mom to ever come to our house. B's family eventually moved. About 10 years later, I heard that she had taken a newborn baby that she was sitting for and thrown him down the stairs because he wouldn't stop crying. She was arrested but escaped jail time by successfully pleading insanity and was hospitalized instead of jailed. The most galling part of the trial, her psychiatrist brought up the bird incident as an example of her extreme psychosis.
What are the craziest fan posts? Viewer submitted story. Me and my boyfriend, we've been dating for almost 2 months, but have been seeing each other for 3, got into a fight because I was super sick over the weekend and was literally throwing up. And after I had been throwing up, my boyfriend tried to have sex with me and I kept telling him no, that I didn't want and wasn't in the mood. And he still took my clothes off, so I told him to just do what he needed to do if I didn't have a choice. So he did. Then like a few minutes and he got mad at me for not being into and told me I made him feel unwanted. And I've been SA in the past and he knows about that, and so I told him that the whole thing was very triggering and now he's trying to gaslight me, I believe, by saying he's sorry I'm hurt by the situation but now sorry for what he did. I don't know if I should break up with him or not.
What's the best case of instant karma you've ever witnessed? The company I work for requires you to pass a series of tests to be considered for employment. First test is general knowledge, just to drop out people who aren't that bright. I took my tests with 30 other people that day and 20 of them failed this test. 10 left. Second test was general knowledge and a further 7 people failed that test, leaving just 3 people left. The tests take a total of 8 hours and there are breaks in between. We were not allowed to leave the building during testing. If we had to leave, then we would have to reschedule the tests for another day. Me and the other 2 guys were stuck there together for the rest of the day, so we got to talking in between tests. One guy was older, maybe in his mid-50s, early 60s, and was bragging about how easy the tests were and couldn't believe 27 people failed. The other dude was my age at the time, pretty young for the job we were applying for. He was nervous and seemed happy he made it through the first 2 tests. As I studied for the test, there was one that I wasn't sure about. I knew I would have a hard time with that one, and when they put out the docket for tests, I saw the hard one would be the last one on the list. My plan was to pass 4 of the tests and reschedule the 5th to give me more time to study. All 3 of us passed the 3rd test and I had to listen to the old man gloat about how easy it was when the young guy and myself lamented it was harder than we thought. The young man said he knew all the math parts but the theory and hardware parts would be the most difficult for him. I said the math would be hard for me, but I was confident with the hardware stuff. I was bluffing, of course. I studied using old Navy manuals that didn't have anything about newer hardware, so I was ignorant to that stuff. I too was strong in the math part because I found out we would be able to use calculators and my father-in-law gifted me a scientific calculator. The old man called us both stupid if we thought that was hard and was in for a shock if we actually got the job. I sit down for test 4 thinking it was the math test according to the docket, but when I opened the book I found out it wasn't. It was the hardware test. I raised my hand and asked to reschedule because of the mix-up, and she said that was impossible after I opened the booklet. I freaked out. My whole life was riding on this test. I moved here for the job, and if I didn't get it I wouldn't be able to afford an apartment. I calmed myself and just tried to answer using context clues and deductive reasoning. After the test I asked the young guy how he did and he said he was sure he failed it. I said me too. This launched the old man into a tirade about how he has worked in this industry for 25 years and if I thought the tests were hard now then I was going to never make it in real life. This went on for 20 minutes about how my generation was weak and stupid and he feared for the future. He said he knew that test like the back of his hand. As you can probably guess, the old man failed. And me and the young guy passed. He didn't say a word and just got up and walked out. I didn't say a word either. I just smiled as he left. Now, this instant karma was twofold. After the old man left, the other young guy went off laughing and making fun of him. Talking about how we got this since we had our calculators, and he was talking about how he hopes we work together and how cool of a story it would be. He went to the payphone and called his girlfriend and told her that he was in, that he was going to pass and that she can start looking for a new house and everything. He had his calculator out playing with it while we waited for the last test. It was a graphing calculator. I was bad in math in high school, so I never took high-level math, but my friends did, and I loved playing with their graphing calculators. I looked at it for a minute and something hit me. Holy crap, this calculator didn't have scientific functions on it at all. He assumed since it was so fancy it did, but it didn't. I told him this and he went white. What do you mean, he said. So I showed him in my old beat-up calculator how I do number conversions and he didn't have the buttons to do it. Now, being the over-preparing dude I am, I learned how to do it on paper in the event we couldn't use calculators. He was not so studious. So I tried to give him a crash course on how to do it on paper and write out number lines and all that. He wasn't getting it. I said maybe he should ask to reschedule and get another calculator. He suggested I give him mine since I knew how to do it on paper. Man, you are cool and all, but I just met you. I'm not good at math and this is the rest of my life we are taking about. I'm sorry, I need mine. He refused to reschedule, saying he got this far and would be fine. He failed. But silver lining, the 4 tests he passed qualified him for another job that paid almost the same, but it was not as good and the one we were going for. I got the job and have been here for 19 years now. When were you the villain in someone's story? As a police officer, I once arrested a woman so much that it took her to the breaking point. I have countless examples of this, but this one haunts me the most. There was a woman in my city who I came to know over a few years and multiple arrests. She was a prostitute, drug addict, would have domestics with her boyfriends, had several kids who were in and out of state's custody. I'll call her Sarah, and unfortunately for Sarah she had a name and date of birth that was easy for me to remember, March 3, 1983. Whenever I saw her I could quickly run her, see if she had warrants, which she often did. Over a few years Sarah went downhill quick, went from a meth addict to a pretty hardcore heroin addict. Sarah moved out of my city and I didn't see her for a while. One night, I get dispatched to a gas station on a woman who arrived in vehicle with her children. Woman was having difficulty walking, talking and appeared intoxicated. Caller was concerned she was going to drive off. I arrive and find Sarah passed out in her vehicle with one of her 4 children in the vehicle. Sarah is fucked up, so high she can barely function. End up arresting her for DUI and have her mother come to pick up her child. Sarah is really upset with me, she just got one of her 4 children back and now she loses that child and is starting over. Sarah also can't understand how she is being charged with DUI since she was parked and not driving. In my state, doesn't matter. I take her to jail. Her blood comes back with morphine, hydrocodone, methamphetamine, amphetamine and Xanax. What's amazing is she was passed out despite having the second highest concentration of methamphetamine I have ever seen in a blood result, well above what was considered the toxic level. Sarah fights the charge. Attorney files motions, she refuses to plea, can't reconcile in her mind that she is charged with DUI despite not driving and that perhaps I treated her unfairly. I made sure to testify to make her case really bad for her just because she was pissing me off. I arrest some people who associate with her and they tell me how crooked I am, that they all watched the dash cam from the stop and it was a bullshit arrest. About a year and a half later the jury trial is approaching and I pull her over again. She is high again, kids in the car. I call another officer over to handle the DUI and I leave. She likes that officer, tells him what an awful person I am and how I'm trying to ruin her life. She gets charged again, kids go back to grandma, and I make sure to send her a note about how I planned everything and that I would ruin her life. Sarah is now fighting both charges. Sarah moves out of state, hires a pretty decent attorney who continues to fight the charges. Both trials are set for last month. About 2 weeks prior I come into work and records tells me a woman came in and left a letter for me. It's a hallmark from Sarah. Written inside, you are the reason I am going through with this. I want my kids to be taken care of regardless of how you think of me. I just checked her probation status and it turns out that she committed suicide the same day I received that letter. It was pretty terrible having to explain to her kids what happened.
My homophobic sister made my son give her a free dress, but she banned him from her wedding. She was crying when I told her that she would no longer wear the one my son made. I have a sister who is getting married in a week. The groom proposed to her a year ago at a family dinner that left everyone speechless, but very happy for them as they are longtime companions. During this dinner, my sister asked my son 17 to make her wedding dress. My son has always loved design and fashion, he took technical courses in these areas and sewing, and even his friends keep asking for his clothes because they are so beautiful. He agreed but said that he needed time and that he would need her opinion constantly. At first, my sister was very annoying. My son drew about 50 dress designs in a month and she only liked one, which he continued with. He sewed it with great quality fabric which I paid for as I wanted to get involved in a certain way. For 5 months he made several adjustments to suit her wishes, as she always complained about something. After a while, he arrived at the final model and it was just amazing. My mother cried seeing my sister in the dress and I confess that I almost got emotional too. The problem was that last week my son came to talk to me about the wedding invitation that had not arrived for him but for other family members. I thought maybe he didn't need one, but it still felt weird. I messaged my sister raising this issue and she replied that she didn't want any underage people at her wedding because there would be alcohol. I asked if she was going to make an exception for my son, but she cut me off and said no. There are no children in our family, my son is the only minor, so I didn't see any sense in this rule for family members. And to make matters worse, my son was very sad and cried because he spent months on this dress and couldn't go to the wedding. I was very upset and told my sister that she should look for another dress as soon as possible, as she would no longer wear the one my son made. She called and yelled at me, saying I was being unreasonable and that I couldn't do this. My mother called me saying I should deliver the dress and follow the rules, but I didn't and hung up on her. Because of this, the family is divided. Many agree with me and condemn my sister's action saying she could only make an exception, but another part says I'm unreasonable and I'm spoiling her big day. I think the reason she's doing this is because she's homophobic, her fiancé is a Christian and has never been close to my son. So I talked to my son and he agreed to sell the dress at market price. He calculated the price of everything and the value was high. We sent the proposal to my sister and she hated it. She said she couldn't afford it because it was too expensive and it should be a gift because she is family. I responded by saying that it was too easy to say she was family to get a free dress, but not enough to include my son. She cried on the call and begged me not to ruin her day, but I didn't call because that to me was bullshit. At no point did she offer to just let my son go or apologize for it. If she wants to exclude my son from this event then she will also be cutting ties with me. I want my dad to be a nut donor to my fiancé and I, but she thinks this is wrong. My fiancé and I have been doing some future planning lately. We're set to get married in the spring next year, and we know we both want kids, so we sat down and talked about how we'd like to make that happen. She's okay with adopting, but I'm not, and we determined that the option that makes us both the happiest is getting a nut donor. It's extremely important to me that the baby be genetically related to both of us. Since she's not in contact with her family, the only way the baby would be related to both of us is if she carries the child and the nut comes from my side of the family. I'm an only child, and have no uncles or male cousins. The only way we could do this is if my dad is the donor. I figured he would be excited to help us have the family we've always dreamed of, and I talked it over with him and he was totally on board. He said he'd let my mom know we were planning on adding to our family. Everything is ready to go on our end whenever we decide to start trying. I thought it was a really beautiful way to unite our sides of the family, and I know my dad felt the same, but to my surprise my fiancée was really against it. She laughed at me at first, which confused me because we were having a serious conversation, and then she asked if I was joking. When I said I wasn't, her face immediately dropped. She literally looked disgusted. She said that would be really weird, as our baby would be my sibling, and that she wasn't comfortable with that in any way, shape or form. My dad has stepped in a bit for her because of the homophobia in her family, and has become a secondary sort of father figure for her, which she brought up. She said having his baby felt wrong. She said it wouldn't feel like a medical procedure or fertility help, it would feel intimate. That's insane. I don't see how it's different from any other donor, other than actually meaning something to us. I am honestly kind of insulted. This is a rejection of my family as well as me, and the fact that she refused to even consider it made me feel overruled in something that's supposed to include both of us. I can't see myself having a connection to a baby that isn't related to me. It wouldn't be my baby, just a baby I'm taking care of. Even if she says she doesn't feel the same, I think she'd have a hard time with it if it was the other way around and the baby wasn't related to her. This feels like our only option, and she shot it down without considering my feelings.
Who is the most disturbing man that you personally know and how did you get back at him? My uncles were gang affiliated and my eldest uncle was an amazing tattoo artist. My dad wasn't a gang member but was well known in our city for participating in gang activity but never jumped in. One of my uncles threw a party for his daughter's birthday. Practically anyone who wanted in the party was allowed to join in. Myself, my brothers and mother weren't at the party as it was also my mother's sister's birthday and we enjoyed being around her more. But my sisters went with my dad as they were close to my uncle's daughter. My sister was left alone sleeping in my cousin's room since our parties always ended up going until the next morning. The door to my cousin's room did not have a lock. As my 13-year-old sister was sleeping she felt someone on her. As she woke up she realized it was a boyfriend of one of our older cousins. He was 19 at the time. Nothing was known beyond that until a month later when my sister had finally told my mom. Brave of her since she was only 13. Many people at that age keep quiet for years. Then everyone in my dad's part of the family became aware of this, including my older cousin, the one with the creepy boyfriend. She was heartbroken but agreed on something with her dad. She set up her then boyfriend into meeting up with her at a local park. My dad along with my uncles and a few members waited at the park at around 9 p.m. It was a very lonely, barely lit, quiet park. A friend of my uncle known as Sonny had a small RV in which they waited in. The piece of crap arrived at the park. That's when my dad and the rest ran up to him and started laying blows on him until they dragged him into the RV. They arrived at my uncle's place, the one who did tattoos. Once they arrived they took him inside where my uncle was ready with all his equipment and gave him some new artwork all over his face, neck, head and hands. All over he had writing indicating that he had forced himself onto my sister, including an extremely big tattoo across his forehead all the way to the right side of his head that said 13-year-olds, and then added a love heart after. They waited until he woke back up. Now around 2 a.m. they dumped him in front of his father's house, not to be discovered by neighbors until the sun came out. My father left a heavy well-written note on the door of the piece of crap's dad house. This led to his dad kicking him out of his house. Surprisingly one of his friends let him stay with him for a while until a month after the incident. Two of his friends were found guilty on a charge regarding taking someone's life. Apparently it happened around 3 months before this whole incident. He was sent to prison where he had his life taken by fellow prisoners in a brutal way. They set his room on fire.
My creepy husband is obsessed with our boss's teenage daughter. What I found in his laptop scarred me. My husband and I work for a small firm here. We were both recommended through a relative of mine. I have been working here for about 6 years, and my husband for about 7 years. During work time, our boss would occasionally bring his then teenage daughter to work. She should have been around 15-ish when we first met her, and had her interact with the employees and stuff to show her what we were doing, how things work, etc. She was an absolute sweetheart and everyone adored her. Fast forward to January of this year, the boss brought her in, officially, letting us know that she will be taking over a good deal of his work overlooking things. We were initially hesitant, considering she was so young, turned 20 this year, but ultimately, she wasn't taking over, more so learning to handle the business while the boss managed other work, I suppose. It helped that she herself was also very keen on cooperating and taking advice, often holding meetings to discuss things and making sure she herself is the last to leave work almost every time. It's been an overall good development in that regard. The issue started initially a few months after she started. She would occasionally hold office events, just to lighten the mood, and this earned her a lot of praise, from all of us, since it's not something the old boss would have time to look into. We were all talking about her, so it didn't feel too weird at first when my husband joined in on the praising. It's so impressive how she's so young but so mature and she's such a breath of fresh air in the office, everyone's so motivated to work because of her, etc. In hindsight, it seems like that was just his way of talking about her with me in general. Every now and then, he'd start singing her praises, when we were at home, a huge talking point always being how she's so mature for her age and understanding, even pointing out how we weren't at that age. I didn't take it much to heart until one time I joked that it was fine if he was immature at times and that I would love him regardless. His response was something along the lines of, well, you were too. Unlike her, I think that was the first time I felt a bit bad, cause it felt like he actually was just comparing me to her now. But I tried not to think too much about it. This slowly spiraled too, going from talking about her maturity to looks, how she can still look good while being so busy with studies and work, how she, and I quote, was definitely more gifted compared to other girls, and once, out of insecurity, I asked if he thought she was prettier than me. He gave me a, of course, you're attractive to me, but objectively, like, not considering my attraction to you, she is prettier. This messed with me for a while, and we ended up having a fight, where I essentially banned him from bringing her up with me if it was not work-related. Also adding to that, was the fact that he started taking extra work every now and then, and working overtime, and while I initially thought it was to just earn extra money, I later found out it was simply cause he knew she usually heads home late too, usually after most if not all office employees left. Fast forward to a few days back, the weekend happened, my husband was out with his friends, and my laptop was at the repairs, so I used his laptop, without his permission. We are relatively free with each other's devices, like, we never have a reason to use each other's devices, but if for some reason we did, the other didn't mind, so I didn't think much of it. I had put some vids on autopay as background noise as I did some work, when I opened his PC folder, and on the left quick access bar, there was a folder with our boss's daughter's name. I had to click it, and when I did, I actively couldn't believe what I was seeing. A folder of over 1K plus pics of her, screenshots from Instagram and other apps, any. And every pic he could find of her, and an insane number of pics, just taken without her consent, like, with either a hidden camera or his phone at the office, ranging from her just sitting or working, to some from a high enough angle to get cleavage or down blouse, and even a few under the table shots, though those didn't have anything to show, from what I had seen. This creeped me out, beyond anything, since it was almost impossible to place my husband, who I have always known as the sweetest guy, for the 6 years we have been married, as someone who would do something like this. I was shocked and just didn't really know how to react, if I should feel disgusted or sad, or angry, I didn't know. But then, it got worse. I used search to look up her name on his laptop and found something that basically turned any form of sorrow or sadness I would have felt into just pure disgust. He basically had a folder poorly hidden deep in a number of folders, full of Photoshop pics of her, some solo, some with him, some with other members of the office, and some just absolutely vile and disgusting. I deleted all traces of me having seen or searched for those, though I doubt it was necessary since my husband isn't the most tech-savvy, to begin with, took a pic of some of the crap I found and left the laptop. I was furious, but I also didn't want him to know yet. So I acted normal that night, and then the next day, I called up my cousin, she was pregnant and her husband was away, and asked if she needed help, and used that as an excuse to move in and help her for a bit. I have talked to my husband, though limited, mostly through text and occasionally at work, but for the last 4 days, I have been living with my cousin. Honestly, I am disgusted, but I also don't know what to do exactly. Like, I feel a mixture of being cheated on, which, I know he didn't do anything with her, but still, I can't explain it. But on top of that, I feel disgusted that my husband was this sort of a man. But even talking about it to my friends or family feels weird. I tried to share with my cousin, but the embarrassment didn't allow me to say anything. I just don't know what to do right now. I can't stay here forever, I'll have to head back sooner rather than later, but I also don't think I can just go back home and pretend that none of this happened or I didn't see any of this, so thought this was the best way to stay anonymous and ask for some form of advice. What should I do and how should I progress? My creepy husband is obsessed with our boss's teenage daughter. So, a lot happened in the course of a few hours. We ended up going over around 4 p.m.-ish, knowing we'd given a few hours to collect whatever. Then, as another comment suggested, we looked for my name, which came out with nothing but regular pics and stuff. After that, my friend asked me to look up co-workers' names, and when I did, that hit some results, with 4 other co-workers' names, all women, but none to the same extent as the boss's daughter. Then my friend pointed out that some of those might be files he received, since the file names were different and some were similar to WhatsApp files as she pointed out. This is something I hadn't noticed, but the edited files were definitely named differently, some being daughter's name plus P-run action and then others just being something like image number or something along that line, which my friend said are pics he received in WhatsApp. We confirmed that they were indeed received from WhatsApp in the pic information. This ultimately made me do something that I shouldn't have done, since it could have blown up in my face. But it had made me anxious and I needed answers. So I asked my friends if they would stay till my husband got back. They agreed, and I decided to take that time to pack my bags, just necessary things for now. My friends did say he's logged into Facebook but didn't want to check his Facebook without me, and by the time they told me that, it was already time for him to come back, so we decided to not do anything. We waited and waited, until he finally came back. He was surprised to see us, but didn't seem to suspect anything and I told him to sit down. He did, and I think that's when he noticed his laptop on the couch and asked what was going on. I told him I saw some things related to the boss's daughter, and that I wanted an explanation. He tried to get angry at first, but quickly dropped that act. I told him I wanted to hear what he had to say and then decide what to do. He said he was fine talking but only if my friends waited in the dining room or another room, as he wanted to explain things to me alone. My friends were hesitant, but I told them it's fine, and that if they hear any issues, to send the drive link to the boss. This was a bluff that I wish I had thought about before he came, but I told him that I saved everything on a Google Drive and wouldn't hesitate sending it to the boss if he tried anything. He assured me he wouldn't act up and asked me what I wanted to know. At that point, I really wanted to hit him, just the look on his face. He looked guilty, like he was looking for excuses but failing or something, I don't know. But I really hated it. But I stayed calm, and told him I said a lot of things, including all the pics of her, the edits and a few other things. I asked him to explain. He kept asking me exactly what I wanted to know, and it was becoming obvious that he was either stalling for an excuse or trying to see how much I knew. I told him finally that I saw the pics, the hidden cam pics and even the edits. He pleaded with me to not get mad, and hear him out. And I told him I'll consider it. He took a minute and told me that he had noticed he was growing more and more attracted to her, intimately, and he apparently struggled with these emotions a lot. This is why he did that, and that he wanted to release his tension without harming anyone, which is why he made those and kept it to himself. I then asked to see his WhatsApp, and the color on his face almost drained. He told me I knew he didn't use WhatsApp, but I told him I had checked his Google Play to see what apps he had installed. After a bit, he handed me the phone and told me to not overreact. I took his phone, and searched around for a bit. He had a lot of pointless apps downloaded, and it was hard to spot, especially since it wasn't even on the home screen. I open it, to find just one group chat, with 3 other colleagues, members of the team he is in basically. And it was just filled with pics of this girl, creep shots taken from different areas, zoomed in for the most part, from today. Like, literally a few minutes before he handed me the phone. A lot of conversations were about fantasies on how they would have effed her. Scrolling up, it keeps getting worse and worse. I won't go into details on the specifics, but a lot of it was about wanting to force themselves on her, as a revenge on the boss kind of thing, but with her acting as the boss, and some were even full on well thought out scenarios, where they are playing out what they do and what not. He kept apologizing, telling me he loved me and that this was all just to keep himself in control and that it was ultimately just harmless fantasizing. I only caught bits and pieces of what he was saying, before just turning on the screen recorder and scrolling, recording the conversations, and the more I scrolled up, the more vile it got. The conversation did predate my husband joining, it seemed, but that didn't really matter. He was very actively taking part in it. I got a good chunk of it, but it didn't seem to end, so I simply went to the chat media, and even that was a huge scrolling down of pics, creep shots from phones, fakes etc. I ended up getting as much as I could and sending it over to me, making sure it's saved on my phone. All the while he kept begging me to forgive him and not ruin his life and career. Sorry, and I quote, our life and careers. I told him I felt betrayed, and I told him I was disgusted at the man he was. And through his apologizing, he kept insisting it didn't really hurt anyone. But I told him it hurt me, and if she found out, it would hurt her too, and he simply pleaded with me not to tell her. For a while we just cried, for different reasons I presume, but the entire time, he kept switching between how he's sorry and he loves me, to how it's not as bad as I am making it out to be and how they were just messing around, online, and weren't hurting anyone. My friends checked in on me a few times, but didn't interfere. After a while, I pulled myself up and told him that I don't see myself staying with him and that I want a divorce. He pleaded with me not to do so, but I simply said that I didn't want to listen to his excuses. I then told him that I wanted to take the laptop, and he froze. I was half expecting him to reject me, but he simply begged me not to show this to the boss or the daughter. I told him I wasn't sure if I wanted to do that, which was a lie, and that I was thinking it over. I told him not to delete the WhatsApp conversations or tell the others, and that if he does, I would send everything to the boss. Ultimately, I want to talk to the daughter first, and then decide what to do and how to tell the father. There was a bit more pleading, and I simply left it on. I don't know what I want to do, I need to think it over and will let him know. And told him to not contact me in the meantime, and that was all we said as we left, with his laptop. When we were leaving, he was basically sobbing and begging for forgiveness, or claiming how it's all just a mistake and nothing actually happened, to the point where I almost did feel bad for me, almost. But I don't think I can feel sympathy after those chats and whatnot. Luckily, my friend was also there to remind me that regardless of what he says, his actions are not for me to forgive. Update 2. My creepy husband is obsessed with our boss's teenage daughter. I ended up going to the boss's daughter. Showed her everything I had, and told her I had the laptop too, if she needed. I could tell it was a good bit for her to process initially, but she said she's used to stuff like this and so, composed herself. Afterward she asked if it would be fine for me to help her go through the screenshots and screen recordings and pics, since she'd rather not have to go into checking the details herself, and I agreed. We sat at a local food chain and basically wrote out a detailed HR report, like not a report to the HR, but a report from the HR, regarding that team. I went over the different aspects of the text caught on the screen recording and the edited pics as well as the creep shots of her. She reassured me that I won't be facing any consequences for this and to leave talking to her father to her. She asked if I were to be called to the police station, if I would be willing to go, and I said I would. She concluded that while in other areas this could have been used to better punish them, high chances are that this won't do much, other than maybe a few days' worth of jail, but that she would still be going to the police, as this will be a good way to make sure if they ever even consider doing something, this could be used to screw them over. As for their jobs, she said she would keep them for a few days, while the filing and reports work its way up, then fire them on spot with no reference or experience certificate, basically rendering any attempts of showing work experience in this company impossible, and should they try, future hirers will be sent the HR report we built. We concluded the meeting there, with her telling me to not worry and just not interact with them at work. After that, I spoke to a lawyer, showed him everything I had, and while he took a small bite, said that things can be done relatively easily. Thing is, it's not like me or my husband have that much joint property or wealth, that there would be much of a dirty breakup financially. But from the looks of things, so far at least, things seem to be going in my favor. My husband did call a few times and texted to see if I would reconsider, but I blocked him more or less. I honestly didn't want any part of his BS. This is the part where the shitstorm I had mentioned started. Calls and messages from relatives, all with the purpose of letting me know that these things happen and that I shouldn't hold it against him. I talked to my mother, and found out that what he told her and a few other relatives, including his parents, were, I got jealous cause he accidentally showed interest in the boss's daughter but never planned to act on it. This caused almost everyone but his mother to side with him, while his mother called me to apologize, saying she was ashamed of what her son had said. I had originally told my husband I wouldn't blow this out of proportion, but ended up telling my mother and his parents, the former who responded exactly as I thought she would. She told me it's not like he acted on it, and that this much is nothing to ruin a marriage over. This didn't surprise me since when one of my aunts got cheated on, she and her other sister had essentially taken the stance of just forgive it and ignore it, move on and don't bring it up. Things will be happy. My mother and I had a huge back and forth where she brought up family reputation, embarrassment if family finds out what he did, embarrassment if I am a divorcee in my 30s, yeah, that's a thing here sadly, and yeah, 29 is still reaching 30s. We ended the call on pretty bad terms, but it was expected. The family itself is more or less on the same stance, with only some choosing to stay away, and even now when I ended up sharing the exact reason with a few members, they responded let it go and fix the relationship or something akin to that. The pleasant surprise came from telling his parents, though, who took my side. After things blew up, his mother apologized to me, telling me she was ashamed of what her son did, while the father told me he will make sure my husband won't be causing any issues for me, in the divorce or in general. I was honestly expecting them to take his side like my family, so this was a welcome surprise. Yesterday the team was called into the boss's office along with some police. I don't know what was said and done, but they were in there for a long time, and by the time they all left, they just looked defeated, especially my husband. It seems she did exactly what she said she'd do, and fired them. I don't know the specifics of it, I don't necessarily intend to ask either. As for me personally, it's been rough. It's easy to get angry when everything is happening, it's the moments when things are calm, that memories and feelings get the best of things. But I will be fine. I get to keep my job, which is huge in my opinion. The whole thing with family isn't getting much better it seems, got a bit worse after the firing. I have my stuff and I have moved in with a friend, for a few days while I look for a smaller apartment. As for my husband, I don't exactly know, but I assume he'll be moving in with his parents, who are pretty annoyed with him. The apartment we stayed in was something we both contributed to living in, so without income, I can't see him maintaining it at all. But at least he's not going to be around anymore.
My boyfriend spent our anniversary with another woman. Now people think he's dating his sister. My ex-boyfriend Tyler was very close to his female best friend Lily, so close that people thought they were dating. The effort he put into my Valentine's gift was nothing compared to what he does for Lily's Palantines. I was like second rate compared to Lily. Everything she wanted from Tyler, she got, but God forbid I ask him for a minute of his time. All of a sudden I'm needy, clingy, and annoying. One day, a coworker of his confronted me for flirting with him when he had a girlfriend. I tried explaining to him that I was his girlfriend, but he didn't believe me. That struck a nerve with me. It got me wondering if others thought I was the homewrecker and not Lily. He didn't leave me alone until I showed him pictures of us on my phone. I've tried talking to Tyler several times about how this makes me feel, but he always brushes me off and says Lily is like family to him and I'm being insecure. Talking to him proved to be useless, so I just stopped bringing it up altogether, especially since our anniversary was coming up. I wanted to do something special for the both of us, so I got us a good deal for a 2-night stay at a resort about 2.5 hours away. I booked it, and when I told Tyler he seemed very excited. I couldn't wait for the trip, mostly because it guaranteed 2 days away from Lily. For once, I could have all of his attention. But, about a week before our trip, he came to me and asked if he could go with Lily since she has a lot going on and could use a pick-me-up. I was shocked and asked him if he really rather spent our anniversary with another woman. He just got mad and called me a cruel jealous witch and said Lily really needs him right now. What about me? I need him too? When I still told him no, he said he didn't want to go at all. Then, he left and we didn't talk for 3 days, so I took that as us officially breaking up. I was heartbroken of course, but as I was crying to my best friend about the breakup and being unable to get my money back, she suggested we go as friends. I agreed and we went on our trip. An hour after we checked in, I got a call from the front desk saying someone was trying to check in under my reservation. When I went down to check, I saw Tyler and Lily. Tyler immediately stomped toward me and went off on me for taking the spot when Lily needed it more. Did he forget the part where I paid for this entire trip? If Lily needed something that badly, she could go on her own trip. Adding to the dramatics, Lily plopped down on a chair and started bawling her eyes out, saying how she just wanted a relaxing weekend to forget about all that's happened to her. After a while of him screaming and her crying, security forced them to leave. The next day on social media, Tyler posted that he and Lily were officially together. No surprise there, they might as well have been together when he and I were still in a relationship. Unfortunately for him, my friends and family are vengeful people. They all started commenting on his post with comments like, "Isn't that your sister? Aren't y'all related?" And "Sweet Home Alabama." He tried to deny those comments, but it was no use because the rumors already spread. It's been 3 months since then, and while nobody bothers them about it anymore, it definitely ruined their reputation, and that makes me happy.
My narcissistic mom wants to bring her young boyfriend to my wedding. I don't know if I should allow her because she ruined my life. I am not close with my mother at all ever since she divorced my dad when I was 7 and almost immediately married my stepfather Mark. Ironically, despite everything, I was close with him. They remained married until I was 16. I was upset when she divorced him and went to live with my dad and stepmom. In my adult life, I've chosen to remain close to my stepdad and even attended his wedding to his current wife, who is a very nice woman. My dad and my stepmom are great people too. Since her divorce to my stepdad, my mom has been in and out of relationships, each time claiming the guy is the love of her life until they do something she doesn't like and then they aren't the love of her life anymore. Both divorces with my dad and my stepdad were for very petty reasons. With my dad, he wouldn't allow her to get a new car because the budget was tight, so she divorced him. The one that lasted the longest was 6 years, and it's the current guy she's with. After I left home, she never did anything with me without her boyfriends, and that's only because their boyfriends insisted she get in touch with me since I'm still her daughter above all else. Funny enough, when I was 25, she broke up with her boyfriend and tried to cry to me about it. After working with my therapist, I set the boundary with my mother that if she wasn't willing to do anything with me without her boyfriend to not bother, and I didn't want to talk about her love life. She was very hurt and we fell out for a while, but she came back around a year later and has respected my rules since. We really only get together about 2 or 3 times per year. I understand that my mom's relationships and love life are important to her, so I respect that we don't get together often. Now, I'm getting married to my partner of 10 years in October. It's a small intimate backyard wedding and reception/barbecue. My mom asked if she could bring her boyfriend. I said no because I don't know him. My mom asked if she could bring him to meet me so I could meet him before the wedding. I said no and that I still had no interest in meeting her boyfriends. She said she understood, but she felt it was unfair that I wasn't allowing her A+1 to my wedding when my dad and my stepdad were allowed to bring their spouses. I told her that the difference was that I knew their spouses. She wanted to know why I was so adamant about refusing to get to know her boyfriend. I explained to her that I saw no need since she'd just break up with them and move on to someone else eventually, as she has always done before. She started to cry and told me I was being unreasonable and treating her as if she's a WH3. Both my fiancé and my sister feel like I should suck it up for one day and let her bring her boyfriend so she can be comfortable there. I'm seriously considering it, but I wanted to know if I'm an a-hole for sticking to my boundary at my wedding. Update: I've decided to email my mother and invite him. I was already leaning towards telling her that he can come when I posted. I decided to set some ground rules for my mother. He is there as A+1 to my mother only. I made it clear to her that he is not my family and he is not my stepfather, so I will appreciate her not telling other people at the wedding he is my stepfather. Mark is my stepfather and he will be there. He is not to be in any family photos. In fairness, my stepdad Mark won't be in any family photos either, only my mom, dad, stepmom, and my siblings. He is not to approach me at any point during the wedding and reception. This does not change my previous boundaries. I'm only allowing him to come for her own comfort and to create a sense of fairness. I respect the fact she is in a relationship, but her love life has nothing to do with me and I wish to keep it that way. I told my mother that these are my terms for him being at my wedding and my terms are final, so I hope she can respect the fact that I'm trying to be reasonable. I used this opportunity to remind her of the reasons I put the boundary up in the first place. These reasons included forcing me to do activities with her shorter-term boyfriends in the past, forcing me to only discuss her love life while showing no interest in my life, and putting her relationships above her own children. Well, my mom called me within 10 minutes of getting the email. She thanked me for allowing him to come and said they would abide by my terms. She said she felt really hurt that her actions during her midlife crisis are why I'm refusing to meet her current boyfriend, who she says she's been with for 7.5 years, and that she thought things would eventually calm down enough where I would be comfortable meeting him. She said she now realizes that it will never happen. I told her that I'm firm on my stance. She started to cry, but she said she understood and only wants him there because being around my dad, stepdad, and their new wives, my dad has been married for 23 years and my stepdad for 12, makes her anxious and he helps keep her calm. She said she respects my stance and said it's her own fault I feel this way. I felt this may be the start of a guilt trip, so I politely ended the call. My narcissistic mom wants to bring her young boyfriend to my wedding. I don't know if I should allow her because she ruined my life. My mother got 911 called on her for domestic violence on Tuesday. She apparently started throwing wine bottles at her boyfriend, who locked himself in the bathroom and called the cops while she destroyed their place in one of her temper tantrums. She wasn't making any sense when the cops got there, so they restrained her and took her to a hospital. She's been stuck in the psychiatric ward ever since. My sister was listed as a contact for her and she got the call about Mom on Wednesday. The doctors at the hospital spoke to my sister and they think she may be showing signs of alcohol-related dementia as well as some sort of psychotic disorder like bipolar disorder. They currently have her in alcohol detox and from what my sister was told, it's pretty bad. They won't allow her visitors until she's out of detox, not that anyone really has a desire to visit her anymore. My sister and I decided enough was enough and we petitioned for guardianship for her yesterday at the request of a social worker who interviewed my family and myself. A guardianship means they can hold her while it winds through the system rather than her being released after 72 hours. My grandmother's upset as she thinks all of the issues should be kept in the family and the state shouldn't step in. My uncles and grandfather are on the side of having a guardianship. As far as they're concerned, she's not welcome in the family anymore and they won't allow her to continue to take advantage of anyone in the family. My sister and I say let her be a professional's problem and let them figure out what to do with her. My brothers don't care and have effectively washed their hands of her years ago, so their stance is whatever keeps her as far away as humanly possible. We can't deal with her anymore and why should we? With the guardianship petition, I'm working on washing my hands of this situation entirely. I'm sure I'll be interviewed about why a guardianship is necessary, but other than that, I don't plan to have any further contact with my mom unless she apologizes and makes amends for her behavior, if that's something she's even capable of anymore. I just don't see that happening and any compassion or understanding I had for her in the past is gone. Whatever state her life is in, she brought it on herself. I just want to move on with my life without her in it and be done with her for good. It doesn't look like she'll be released from the hospital anytime soon, so there's no risk of her attending my wedding. I did talk to her boyfriend yesterday after my sister and I filed our paperwork and we decided to invite him to lunch. He's decided to break up with her for good and we learned just how bad things were with her. He's a real nice guy who's been caught up in a bad situation and had no clue how bad she could be. I feel really bad for him. I did decide to invite him to my wedding as I can tell he's a lonely dude who's been to hell and back. Not sure if he'll show, but the offer is there. There was a time I'd have allowed an event like this to ruin the run-up to the wedding, but I've been able to separate my mom's behavior from the wedding. It hasn't put a damper on it. Now that my mom is squared away, I can enjoy myself. Update: the only news I have on my mother is that she's out of detox and currently in a catatonic state, refusing to speak, eat, or drink water. They may install a feeding tube if she doesn't let up. I think she's trying to be dramatic and get attention, so do my uncles. We're not sure she has dementia, but she definitely has something going on, but doing any kind of evaluation while she acts like this is difficult. The doctors made it very clear that if she doesn't quit drinking, she will die within the next 5 years and it may even still be too late. I think I'd feel more sad, but I've had to realize that I lost my mother long ago. I did invite my mom's boyfriend, but he chose not to come. As for the wedding, I'm now happily married and on Wednesday we found out that I'm pregnant.
What's the worst thing you've done for money? I'm not sure if it's really that bad, but I became the Walter White of test answers. Freshman and sophomore year of high school, the teachers in the math department used only multiple choice tests. This is sort of lazy, but what's even worse was that they all used the same tests. It was lazy and dumb, but there you have it. Anyhow, this was in the age where the TI-83 reigned supreme and the internet was still catching on. I discovered a program online that would let me download programs from my computer into the calculator to make programming faster, but I realized that you could just put in text files. I started out just downloading notes, formulas, and stuff like that into my calculator and using them as a cheat sheet, but then I got even more clever. I could sell these digital cheat sheets to everyone for $5 per test and make a fortune. We had weekly quizzes and monthly tests. Quizzes were $2 per sheet and tests were $5, and it got to the point where I was selling upwards of 300 cheat sheets per week. Then I realized something. The file for answers to a multiple choice test would just be a 10 or 15-digit hex key or a really big number. By this time I had friends working distribution for me, so we realized that all you would have to do would convert the hex to a base 10 and then it would just look like a ridiculously long nonsense number. I had 2 buddies in first period math, so we would compare our keys after the test, go with our best, and then start distributing in the halls and sell the crap out of those. We sold to the good students, we sold to the slackers, and we could even sell to kids who didn't have calculators. Having a random number scrawled on your arm became standard, and I don't know what the teachers ever thought about the consistency in test taking. Those 2 years my network and I probably made about $500 per month just selling our knowledge, and we walked the halls as gods among men.
I saw some intimate texts on my husband's phone. That's all I saw before he snatched the phone from where it was sitting. I wasn't going through his phone or snooping. It was just lying on the arm of the couch and I glanced over when I saw messages pop up. I definitely did not expect to see anything like that. He tried to tell me I was being paranoid, that nothing was going on. Believe me, I tried desperately to think of any innocent reason why I would have seen those texts pop up on his phone. It doesn't take long to realize there is no innocent explanation. Luckily I followed some advice here and I logged into his forgotten iPad. He rarely ever uses it. I saw the text that I had seen flash on his screen and a lot more than just that. It seems like after she sent him a message about 2 months ago he told her to not contact him again. He could have blocked her if he was serious about it, right? Eventually, he started talking to her, and their conversations have been going on pretty regularly since then, and they're almost entirely sexually explicit conversations. Where on earth did this lady come from? I doubt she randomly texted my husband's number by chance. I confronted him with undeniable proof that I had seen messages, and he eventually admitted it's a woman he met while on a business trip and that they were only together a few times, but then she started texting him. He slipped and said normally, "I don't give them my." Then he realized what he was saying. Admitted to me that normally he doesn't give random women he hooks up with his phone number. He didn't say the full thing, but that's what he was about to say. He was flustered. He couldn't believe I was smart enough to look at the iPad and that he hadn't thought about that. He still won't admit that there's been anyone more than this one woman. He says he's not in love with her, there's no feelings, it's just been flirting and sexting and he got carried away. I can't just pack my bags and leave. I have 4 little kids. So I told him to leave, at least for now. I'm disgusted. He begged to stay and to fix things, but I refused to talk to him. The part that I hate the most is that on his mother's deathbed her final wish was for him to stay with me and build a beautiful family with me. I wonder if that even crossed his mind while he was with this other woman? He's staying at a hotel right now. I almost can't function. I want to smash all of his belongings. One second I'm enraged and the next I'm sad and blaming myself. I know this sounds pathetic, but I don't want to be a single mom of 4 kids under 7. I don't want to be married to him right now either, but I don't want my kids to suffer. I would rather suffer the pain of having to see him, and the pain of having to act like everything is fine, rather than my kids having to endure the suffering of not having a functioning household.
Why don't you talk to that family member anymore? Last time I saw my dad in person was 1998. He never wanted kids, and when my little sister was born, forced my mother to give her up for adoption. My mother went into a spiral of depression after that, and took her own life when I was still a teen. I found her body, had to deal with the cops and all that, and when my dad came home days later, he threw me out. "You don't have your mother to protect you anymore," he said. I had to graduate high school homeless, crashing on friends' couches and guest rooms. My college dreams were crushed because I had to get a job to support myself, which was hard until I became a manager of a bookstore at age 18. That was 1987. Since then, I saw him only a handful of times. I got married, had a child. My wife, in her vain attempt to have some kind of family, tried inviting my dad and his new wife to be part of ours, since they only lived 20 minutes away. But he only made it over a handful of times. My son saw his relatives, distant cousins, in another country more than he saw his own grandfather. My father is very rich, and I was very poor, but my dad never offered to help. Because of this, we struggled for over a decade before we got out of poverty. He never spoke to us unless my wife made contact. Last time I saw my dad, he invited me out for my birthday in 1998, but it turns out he just wanted professional advice from my wife. She was an insurance adjuster. She was pretty insulted when she figured this out, and after that, she gave up on trying to have any kind of relationship with them. In 2000, they moved away, and said they had no fixed address, and planned to travel the world. I suspect that was a ruse, because I have since discovered they bought a multi-million-dollar beachfront condo that same year. While my dad has been pretty good at hiding his address, his wife is not. She's one of those socialite wannabes, and while she's not really a bad person, she's not exactly complicated by the realities of a common man, if that makes sense. Imagine being born rich, under your father's shadow, and never really having to have an actual job. Then, because of my work background check needs, I had to find out about their life and the money they made, because of the whole possible foreign money influence thing. I know that they are worth several million, have a lot of real estate, classic cars, and a 57 pleasure yacht with a staff. The US government considers them safe, so I guess that's good. In 2014, my wife of 25 years died, and that was the last time I spoke to them. I figured the mother to your only grandchild has died was a good enough reason to speak to them, and I sent them a certified letter. I got back a generic email from the wife, which can be summed up as, "So sorry, it happens, but don't worry, you'll find someone else. Your father did." Which may come off as callous, but I think that's really how she sees things, and thought she was being mature and professional. No offers to help or "here's my number, call me if you need anything," or anything like that. Just a generic, "our condolences for a troubled time," one might get from a vendor or something. She even signed it with her full name and professional credentials. No idea if my dad even knows or cares. And that's ultimately it, he doesn't hate me. Hate is framed as the opposite of love, but really, they come from the same root. He is actually the opposite of love, indifference. He literally does not think of me or care, which is how he was about most people in his life. He sees people like appliances, you use them when you need them, otherwise you don't think about them much. I mean, do you think about your toaster until you need toast? He's like that about people. And when the toaster has problems, throw it out and get a new one. Once in a while, I have to look them up because I have to re-up clearance or something. I last know my dad was alive and present for a voting redistricting video call for his district about a year ago. I suspect when he dies, I will not be informed, but will find out months or years after the fact. Finally liberated, my journey to freedom in summary, I have finally reached a point in my life where I can return home. It has been a long and complicated journey, beginning with meeting my husband in college and gradually changing myself to fit his desires without realizing it. I believed I was happy and in love, and I never experienced any physical abuse. However, after moving closer to his family, something shifted. He began prioritizing his father's wishes over his own, and our financial situation took a turn for the worse. In the past, we had been diligently saving money for my first car. But after the move, unexpected expenses arose, and all the funds I had saved were drained to cover bills. His father freely used credit cards and subscription services, and I somehow ended up subsidizing it out of fear of losing our home. Over time, his father became increasingly unhappy with me maintaining contact with friends and family. My husband even suggested that it would be best for everyone involved if I reduced the frequency and duration of those conversations. Meanwhile, I worked hard for 2 years with minimal unemployment, while my husband and his father spent countless hours playing video games. I believe that if we communicated and tackled these challenges together as a team, we could overcome them. However, about a month ago, I finally saw the truth and reached a breaking point. I confided in a friend who offered assistance. Today, I made the difficult decision to give my husband my wedding ring. Despite feeling scared and unsure, I stepped into a taxi that had been arranged for me and am about to board a plane. After years of being isolated from my loved ones, constantly watching my words and plastering on a false smile while crumbling inside, I am now on my way to finally be free. I am unalived with anticipation and gratitude as I prepare to reunite with my family and friends. Update: finally liberated. My journey to freedom. It has been a few days since everything happened, and I believe it's time for an update. Firstly, I am safe and staying with my family. They have been incredibly supportive and helped me get a new phone and phone plan. It turns out the phone I had belonged to my husband's family and was on their plan. They cut off my access, but I am returning the phone to them after wiping it clean since it is rightfully theirs. A couple of days after leaving, in a half-asleep state, I messaged one of my husband's brothers who lives near my current location. I thought he might understand the situation since he went through a similar experience, being divorced from someone who cheated on him and took advantage of him financially. In the message, I explained why I left and expressed that if my husband wanted to continue the relationship, we needed to return home where we both have family support, seek counseling together, address his father's interference, and contribute financially to the household. Unfortunately, his brother's response showed a lack of understanding, despite his own past. To summarize, he called me names, accused me of making excuses, and questioned why we didn't seek counseling earlier when we were in a different state and struggling financially due to his father's actions. He claimed that my husband had made changes to maintain peace, but those changes came too late, only a week before I left. He proceeded to criticize my mental health struggles, accusing me of being weak and fake. He even stated that his family had always despised me and that I was a burden to my husband. I had asked my husband to help with household chores and find a job, things that should be expected in any partnership, but I had to fight with him constantly about them. His brother also mentioned that I should have informed him earlier about my decision to leave, disregarding the fact that I was in a fragile mental state and needed support. The courtesy officer, who ensured my safe departure, was necessary not only because of their father's history but also due to my suicidal thoughts, which my husband had previously dismissed. It's important to note that I only discovered their father's criminal history almost 6 months after moving in with them. At the time, they assured me that the charges were false. Recently, with the help of a friend, I managed to obtain some details from the case file, although they advised me not to reveal the extent of the horrific information disclosed. They expressed serious concerns for my safety. Now that I am back in my home state, I plan to review the case file myself. Leaving was the right decision. The situation I was in was terrible, and I constantly had to solve and pay for problems caused by my husband and his family. It hurts because I still love the person he used to be, the one who worked hard in college, always tried his best, and selflessly helped his loved ones. I love the man who was unaliving to compromise and remember that video games were just for fun. However, the man he has become is unrecognizable. He has become cold, lost his passion, and displayed a clear prioritization of his games. Since he isn't unaliving to make an effort to fix our relationship, I have chosen not to do so either. My focus now is on taking care of myself and seeking the support I need. It may be painful, but I am determined to heal and better myself, with or without him. For now, I am safe, starting the healing process, and surrounded by the love that I've missed for far too long.
My boyfriend smashed my foundation to prove that I am beautiful without it. What should I do? My boyfriend, 27, and I, 20, have been together for about 6 years. My boyfriend has always made comments about how I don't need makeup, and how I don't need to cover up my face or my freckles. I've always taken it as a compliment, but I still wear makeup every day. Yesterday, while I was prepping my face to apply makeup, my boyfriend suddenly came up behind me and threw my foundation bottle onto the floor. It smashed everywhere, including on me, and I screamed. Mostly because I was so shocked and confused. I was scared that he was going to hit me, so I kept my hands in front of me for defense. My boyfriend seemed a bit regretful, and told me he had done it to show me how I don't need makeup at all. I didn't know what to say. I was literally stunned and even a bit scared. I left the room without saying anything. I really don't know how to feel. Obviously it was a bad idea for him to do it. It was a Dior foundation, so it cost a lot. I don't even remember my shade, which I got shade matched ages ago. But I really can't decide whether it came from a good place. Was it a misguided attempt to show me he loved me? Or was he just backtracking after making a mistake? I'm really not sure how I should feel. I'm not sure if I'm overacting. It's not like he threw it at my head or something. But it does feel off. What should I do from here? I'm a little scared that if he threw the foundation, he could throw something else with that same strength. I ruined her marriage with a glitter bomb. Something I sent to my sister-in-law potentially ruined her marriage. Am I the a-hole? I sent my sister-in-law, from hell, a bomb with slong confetti. Why? For the last 18 months, she's rained emotional terror on my husband's family. To keep it short, in the last 18 months, she has overtaken on white substances with her, then live-in boyfriend and claimed it happened against her will. She claimed she was assaulted outside her work, drugged again and dumped in an alley 2 cities away. She faked stage 3 colon cancer. She again claimed she was kidnapped. She verbally assaulted the whole family for 3 days incessantly. She turned her accusation and assaults from how bad the family was to me and manipulation against her mom and groom her son, who I held while he cried and begged us not to let him go home. She accused me of trying to replace her in the family because I have a college degree, accused me of organizing an assault on her. She tried to manipulate my husband to leave me and take our daughter with him to be with her. She uses different phone numbers to keep berating everyone, except me. She impersonated her son and pretended to be suicidal. She threatened us with a weapon if we ever came near her house, 2 hours away. My sister-in-law was recently married to her 5th husband. After a 2-month meeting, date, marriage thing. Yes, we are Mormon, but even that is too fast. Her phone got mixed up the day of her wedding and it came out that she had been intimately texting a different extended family member of one of her kids, all have different dads, as soon as the day before the wedding. After she got married, she got super brave and impersonated her husband and also chewed out everyone, citing all kinds of ridiculous reasons. Well, I was fed up with the abuse. I sent her an anonymous glitter bomb. 5 ounces of fine glitter. Packed with slong confetti. And signed it as the guy she was intimately texting. That was a month ago. She's been on a tangent about the confetti for a week now, even after my husband and mother-in-law have asked her to be no contact. She keeps coming up with new phone numbers to contact them. We are up to 6 numbers now. Her new husband has left her. She alludes to it being at the fault of the confetti bomb. I guess one of the kids opened it and asked her about it. Maybe the husband found out. Some of my friends think I went too far. Some think it's hilarious. I have no remorse except to maybe feel guilty about not feeling guilty. My future in-laws insisted that we have a prenuptial agreement because they think I'm a bartender, but the table got silent when I told them I make more than my boyfriend. I have been dating my partner casually for 3 years and 8 months. Over the last 8 months, we have gotten more serious. He works in IT, and as I only work behind a bar in a strip club, he always seemed to assume I make much less than him. He'd always say that he never wanted us to discuss money as he didn't want me to feel embarrassed, so I never brought it up as I didn't care, even if I found it a bit funny despite the fact I own both my car and home while he is renting and paying off his car. I like him, so I brushed it aside, figuring if we ever moved in together, we could talk about our finances and be open about it. Despite him thinking I only work behind the bar, I am a mixologist at a high-end club, so on top of a very generous salary, I make excellent tips most nights, too. I've worked at the same place for 9 years and love it there. As things were getting more serious, he wanted me to meet his parents, and I agreed. Yesterday, we had dinner with his parents, and they disapproved of me during the dinner. His mother brought up that she didn't think this was a good idea, but if he were insisting on doing this when we got married, we'd need to have a prenuptial agreement to protect her son. I waited silently for my partner to say anything, but he didn't. He just continued to eat, and I got annoyed before agreeing with her. I told her I fully decided that we needed a prenup as I'd need to protect my assets. This led to some laughs from around the table, and I finally asked my boyfriend how much he made. He tried to brush it off before finally revealing he made £25,000 a year and telling me it was fine and not to feel less. I won't lie. I laughed at the table, not caring that I was rude, and bluntly told him that I make £43,291 a year, not including my tips. They didn't believe me, so I began to point out how I go on holiday twice a year, how I own my home and car while he rents and is paying off, and how I always bought him lovely gifts. I then told him for perhaps the 100th time that I'm a mixologist, not a bartender. The dinner got silent, and on the drive to my home, he scolded me for embarrassing him. How could I not have told him I made that much money that I should have told him from the start? I reminded him that he didn't want us to talk about money, and I figured we'd talk about our finances when and if we moved in together. He kept talking about how I should have just privately told him after dinner and not embarrass him in front of his parents, but when I asked him why he didn't defend me when his mother embarrassed me, he had no answer. Update: I broke up with him.
My wife wants to abort my nut. Me, 24, and my wife, 25, have been together for 6 years. We got married right after we graduated and she got pregnant soon after. We were both excited to be parents, boy or girl. We were thrilled to have a chance to raise a mini-us. The pregnancy wasn't particularly hard, and aside from regular complications there was nothing that stood out or made life hell for my wife. 4 days ago she delivered the baby, and when I saw it I was thrilled, but once the doctors gave me the news my heart broke. It was a girl, but she was born with cerebral palsy. While I had loved that baby till that point, I knew that there was no way we could give this child the special and additional care it needs. Our entire lives would be spent giving extra care, and that child would never have a normal life in our life, as we knew it would never be good again. I didn't know what to say or do. I didn't want to keep this child, but I didn't have the heart to tell my wife either. I waited for a while till she was stabilized, then went to my wife. I didn't want to burden her with my feelings yet. The doctors informed her to, and I could see the tears in her eyes. I could do nothing but reassure her that we will get through this. To my complete shock, she spilled her true feelings to me then and there. She shared my sentiments that this child would completely ruin our lives and we would spend the rest of our living days caring for a child that will never really be their own human. I was still hesitant to give her my thoughts, but she kept apologizing to me as though it was her fault. I confessed to her that I felt the same way and it might be in our best interest to put the child up for adoption. We still decided to take her home for the time being and then deal with this. I haven't shared this news with my friends yet and neither has my wife. We plan on telling them that she had a miscarriage. We only told our parents. My mother was furious to hear what I thought. She said I am more than capable of caring for this child since money is not a factor for me or my wife, but that was never my point. This child needs more than just money, a lot more, and whether or not I'm willing to do that is a different thing. I genuinely don't think me or my wife are equipped to do so. My mother was telling me off, so I told her that if it's such an issue then I can pay for the child while she raises it. She changed her tone instantly and essentially gave me the same reasoning that I was giving for not wanting to keep her. She told my entire extended family and now I'm being bombarded with insults. All we wanted was a healthy baby we could raise. Everyone expects us to care for a child but none of them would do the same in our situation. I'm conflicted now. Am I the a-hole in this situation?
I thought I got my sister pregnant. I suddenly remembered this story today. I don't think I have ever told this story to anyone before. So here goes. This happened a few years ago when I was a preteen. During the summer, my family and I went back to our hometown to visit my grandparents. We were short on rooms, so my sister and I shared the same room the entire summer. We had separate beds, but sometimes my sister would trade blankets with me because my blanket was thicker and warmer. One day during the summer, I discovered PRN. But instead of finishing the job when I watched it, I went to sleep that day without completing the experience. I woke up with wet spots on my bed and underwear the next day. At the time, I was about 80% sure what came out of me wasn't pee, so I went on Google to figure out what happened. I learned that I had a wet dream. I washed my underwear and my bed sheets, but for some reason I did not wash my blanket. When I went back into my room, I saw my sister had switched blankets with me and I freaked out. I didn't say anything and just quickly left the room. I ran out of the room and Googled, can you get someone pregnant from a wet dream? Obviously none of the results I was looking for popped out. I thought my life was over and I accidentally got my sister pregnant because she was using my blanket that had a little bit of my ejaculation on it. The idea haunted me and I did not tell anybody because I was too scared. Maybe like a week after that, I finally got the courage to tell my dad that I got my sister pregnant. This was the conversation. Me, Dad, remember when I accidentally peed on my bed, Dad? Yay? Me, it wasn't pee, Dad. Yay. No, it wasn't pee, you're going through puberty, it's perfectly normal. He walked away. End of conversation. After that conversation, I just decided to wait a few months to see if my sister was pregnant. Needless to say, she was not pregnant. I was just a really dumb child.
What made you fall in love with your partner even more? My wife is constantly doing things for me that make me a little gooey on the inside. Today, it was the fact that she went and bought me my favorite candy bar, and didn't tell me, so when I opened the fridge, it was there. I was so happy. But the nicest thing she's ever done? I was once in the hospital for a week. She rushed me to the ER in the middle of the night, and we had no idea what's wrong with me. The doctors in the ER couldn't figure it out, so I was admitted for observation. While I was there, I was on a liquid diet only. I think it was the second night I was there. I told her I would kill for some applesauce. She walked her pretty butt down to the cafeteria to get me some, but came back and said, bad news. They don't have applesauce. But I got an apple and a spoon. I said, okay honey, what are you going to do with that? I'm going to make you applesauce. She says, I just lost it. I had this image of her with this apple and the spoon, trying to mush the apple up in a bedpan trying to make me applesauce. Once I stopped laughing I said, oh honey, that's so sweet, but you have to cook apples first to make applesauce. She had no idea. Her mind was blown. But the fact that she was going to do whatever she had to do to get me applesauce at one of the worst times in my life made me fall even more in love with her. She is the truest and the best, and I don't tell her enough. Be right back, gotta go tell her how awesome she is. My sister hates my wife because she's black. My sister and I have been civil despite us being half siblings. I'm Asian and she's white. My wife is African American. My sister would call her a spoiled rotten woman anytime she'd come over, however my sister stopped after a private conversation with my wife. My sister thought this because my wife talked about how growing up she would get gold on her birthday from family members. My wife has a jewelry collection that has grown over the years. My wife is by no means a rotten woman. She's extremely charming, and besides my sister, I've never heard of anyone that dislikes her. So about a week ago was my niece's second birthday and my sister invited my family. My wife and my sister were talking in separate groups. At one point someone from my sister's group complimented my wife's dress and my sister somehow took that as complimenting her weight and said, well, we can't all maintain a size small. Some of us would rather take care of our children. Everyone was not only stunned but very confused. My wife changed the subject and they continued to talk until it was time for cake and gifts. It was going very well. The kids were eating and my niece was loving her presents, but then it was our turn to give our gifts. She and I picked out a bracelet from the jewelry collection to give her with a card that said from one gold girl to another. My wife also picked out a watch and a pair of earrings for my sister. How my wife could be so generous to a woman that doesn't deserve it I will never know. When my sister and her husband opened the gifts, the only one not smiling was my sister. My sister said, "Do I look like I need your handouts?" Awkward silence. My wife tried to explain that she wanted to get my niece something nice, but it seemed like everything my wife said just made her more angry. My sister began getting louder with my wife saying, "What do you think, I'm too poor to give my daughter a nice gift? I don't even raise my voice at my wife, and I'd be damned if anyone else did, so I told her to take our daughter and wait in the car." My sister then turned her anger on me. I tried to explain there were no taking sides, but my sister then said that Beach is trying to make me look bad in front of my husband and friends in my home. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. I told my sister that her insecurities were not my wife's problem and that the one-sided rivalry she had with her needed to stop. I then told her husband we would not come back until my sister fixed whatever hatred she had for my wife. Like I said, it's been a week and all we've gotten is empty excuses. While I will admit I could have talked to my sister in private, she chose to invite my wife, and I just like she chose to yell at my wife in front of everyone. My mom thinks I was too harsh with my sister while my dad applauds me for standing up for my wife. My sister's boyfriend was tweaking because I took a shower. Turns out it's sinful for me to take a shower in my own home. I, 17, live at home with my two sisters and parents. My older sister, 22, has been dating her boyfriend, 21, for 3 months now. He's been sleeping over at our apartment ever since they started dating, but the frequency of the sleepovers have been increasing over the past few weeks. Our apartment isn't tiny, but it's small enough that we all share a bathroom. The room doesn't have air conditioning and only has one window that doesn't really let a draft through. When you shower, the room steams up a ton, so my whole life we've just either left the door ajar or opened the door fully as soon as we stepped out of the shower and did the rest of our bathroom stuff. The very first time my sister's boyfriend slept over, I was getting ready to go to bed in the bathroom and had the door closed, but unlocked. I was taking off my boxer shorts when he walked into the bathroom. He immediately apologized, closed the door, and we never spoke about it again. Well, last week I thought I was home alone and was taking a shower in the afternoon with the door ajar, as always. After I was done, I opened the bathroom door and continued with my routine, lotion, face cream, stuff like that, and noticed that my sister had come home during my shower. When I was done, I walked into the kitchen to find my sister and her boyfriend having an argument. I didn't want to intrude, so I left and soon heard the front door fall closed. In the evening I made dinner for our family, and while I was cooking, my other sister, 20, came and talked to me. Apparently, our oldest sister and her boyfriend argument was about me and my showering habits. He thinks it's disgusting that I shower with the door ajar and feels uncomfortable with me using the bathroom in my own house. This shocked me, because from the way our bathroom is set up, you can't even see the shower from outside of the door. I went to my other sister and asked her if this was true, and she refused to talk to me. It's not as if I was the only one that showered like this. We all do. I'm just the only one taking showers in the afternoon/evening when her boyfriend is usually there, because that's when I come home from hockey practice.
My horrible girlfriend and her friends called my manhood shrimp. So I pretended to go to the bathroom and left them to pay for their food. Yesterday was my girlfriend's, I'll call her Jessica, birthday celebration. She had elected that as her party. We should go out with some of her friends to a seafood restaurant. I offered to pay for the whole bill as my birthday gift to her, and she thanked me greatly. There were 8 of us at the restaurant, me, Jessica, and 6 of her friends, all women. Jessica told them all that I was going to pay for everyone's meal, and that they should feel free to order whatever they want. We all got to talking, and her friends began making some subtle jokes about my pee size. They said stuff like, these tiny shrimps look delish. And then shot me a quick glance and snickered to themselves. The first few times, I didn't notice anything. After a few of the same shrimp-related remarks, however, I took notice. Of course, I found this to be wildly inappropriate, but I didn't say anything to avoid an awkward situation. The jokes persisted, though. After a few more, I couldn't keep quiet any longer. I asked them, "What's with the shrimp jokes?" And they gleefully told me that Jessica had shared details of my manhood with them, specifically relating to its size, obviously. I was dumbfounded and was at a loss for words to reply with. I eventually asserted that my manhood was not to be a topic of discussion now or ever among them. My girlfriend seemed surprised that I had gotten upset, claiming that it was not that deep, and that they were just having a little fun. I was fuming, though I kept my anger calm and under control. I stated that I was going to the bathroom and left the table. By this point, I was done with her and her friends' disrespectful and immature antics. So I decided that I wasn't going to pay for them like I had said I would. I left the table, pretended to go to the bathroom, and proceeded to leave the restaurant, leaving them to pay for their food. A few hours after that, Jessica texted me saying that I'm a terrible person and should be ashamed of myself and all that. I told her that she obviously shouldn't have joked about my Johnson like that with her friends, to which she replied by calling me a beach and a pussy for not being able to take a joke. I've not replied since that message.
My girlfriend is mad I won't let her go on holiday alone with her male best friend. I met my current girlfriend in our freshman year of college and we have had a great relationship so far. Recently, however, she and I have been fighting over a proposed trip she intends to go on at the end of this month. She has a friend named Paul. Paul and her met at a club while we were dating and they exchanged numbers. I do not like Paul as he always messages her, but she reassures me he just wants to be friends. I fully believe that he has feelings for her from only knowing him a few months. They've always spent an inordinate amount of time together, Even more than most of her other friends, and often more than I get to see her in a week. They sometimes go to have breakfast or lunch together. She always comments about how nice of a friend he is when he pays for her meals. He's also made occasional inappropriate remarks about her over text, and told her she is too good for me. She claims this is only him joking, as that is how he is. I've brought this up to my girlfriend multiple times, but she insists he just sees her as a friend. Well, things between us have soured over Paul in the last week or so. His birthday is coming up soon, and he asked her to go on a trip with him to LA, which is on the opposite side of the country from us. She mentioned the plans in a kind of offhanded manner, and when I said I wouldn't be comfortable with that, she and I got into an awful argument about it. As it turns out, he paid for the trip including plane tickets before asking her. And when he asked her, she already agreed to go. I asked her not to go and said I'd find it incredibly inappropriate and hurtful, especially since he only booked one room for both of them. She said I was being hurtful to her friend and would really hurt their relationship. She also says that I was being controlling and accused me of not trusting her. I'm dating the woman that my ex-wife accused me of cheating with, but I was the one who divorced her for cheating on me. The title might sound confusing, so let me explain. I've never cheated on anyone in my life, and I strongly believe it's a terrible thing to do. However, my ex-wife cheated on me multiple times. I foolishly forgave her each time because we had 2 kids together, and I hoped she would change. I know, I made some bad choices, but let's move on. 3 years ago, while we were still married, I worked with a woman named Kay. We were only friends at work, never flirted, and never connected on social media. Our interactions were limited to work, nothing more. During one of the times my ex-wife was cheating, she accused me of cheating with Kay. At the time, I didn't know my ex was cheating, so her accusation seemed completely unfounded and made no sense. But she insisted that Kay and I had something going on, which was not true. My ex was projecting her own infidelity onto me. I'm a naturally funny person who can make almost anyone laugh, and that's just part of who I am. My ex-wife and I started talking because I made her laugh, but I didn't see it as flirting. I was simply being myself. Anyway, fast forward 3 years, and I finally gathered the courage to kick my cheating wife out, and we're in the final stages of divorce, just waiting for a silly 2-month waiting period before I'm free. Recently, Kay showed up in my Facebook's People You May Know section. I decided to add her, and it reminded me of the false accusations my ex-wife made. I thought, why not? And messaged Kay. Turns out, Kay had a crush on me 3 years ago but never acted on it because I was married. Now both of us are single, so we're going on a date this weekend. My ex-wife is losing her mind, going crazy, and insisting that I was cheating on her too. She claims I'm a hypocrite and that she knew I was cheating back then but was too scared to admit it because I wanted to play the victim. I want to make it clear that I never cheated. Yet this has all proved to be sort of stressful, and I wonder if I should just cancel the date with Kay altogether?
I'm breaking up with my boyfriend because I listened to a Kendrick Lamar song. The song is We Cry Together off of his new album. After it was over, I just sat there knowing that's exactly what I sound like when I argue with my boyfriend. He brings out the absolute worst in me. I'm tired of being screwed over and effed around with. I'm tired of not being taken seriously until I'm bawling my eyes out. I'm tired of begging for compassion. I'm tired of taking 2 steps forward then 3 steps back. It's exhausting loving him. I'll always care about him. He deserves to have people who care about him. I won't cut him off completely, but I can't be in love with him anymore. It's not worth the pain. I don't know why I expected someone who's never experienced love before to know how to give it back to me. But I hope he learns and finds his person. He deserves that. But he can't get that from me.
The unsettling discovery in my childhood home. As I sit here, huddled in my bed, the events of the past few days replay in my mind like a horrifying movie. I never thought that my childhood home, a place filled with warmth and love, could hold such dark secrets. It all started innocently enough, but what I uncovered would forever haunt me. It began on a stormy night, rain lashing against the windows like the tears of a weeping sky. I was visiting my parents, taking a trip down memory lane. The nostalgic scent of my childhood greeted me as I stepped through the front door. However, something felt different. An eerie silence hung in the air, sending chills down my spine. That night, as I settled into my old bedroom, I noticed a small, ornate key hidden beneath the dresser. Its golden hue glimmered, beckoning me to uncover its purpose. Curiosity consumed me, and I decided to investigate further. Was it a forgotten relic from my childhood? Or perhaps a key to a secret room? I had to find out. With trembling hands, I tested the key on various doors throughout the house. Each time, disappointment washed over me as the key failed to unlock anything. My excitement began to wane, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to this mysterious key. Finally, as I ventured into the basement, I discovered an old, dusty door concealed behind a stack of forgotten belongings. Could this be it? My heart raced with anticipation as I tried the key. To my amazement, the door creaked open, revealing a hidden room. I cautiously entered the space, my footsteps echoing in the eerie silence. The room was unlike anything I had ever seen before. It was filled with ancient artifacts, strange symbols etched into the walls, and an overwhelming sense of darkness. Fear gripped me, but I couldn't tear myself away from this horrifying discovery. As I explored further, a peculiar object caught my eye, a weather journal. Its pages were filled with cryptic writings, describing occult rituals and malevolent spirits. Goosebumps formed on my skin as I read chilling accounts of unexplained phenomena that plagued the previous owners of this house. It seemed my childhood home was a playground for the paranormal. Suddenly, a cold gust of wind swept through the room, extinguishing the lone candle I had brought with me. Panic surged through my veins as I realized I was not alone. Whispers filled the air, growing louder with each passing second. Shadows danced menacingly, closing in on me from all sides. Terrified, I sprinted towards the exit, desperate to escape this haunted nightmare. Slamming the basement door shut, I locked it, hoping to contain the evil within. I vowed never to return to that room, to that house, ever again. Now, as I lay awake in my own bed, I can't help but wonder what dark forces still lurk within those walls. Was my discovery a mere glimpse into a world I wasn't meant to see? I may never have all the answers, but one thing is certain. I'll forever be haunted by the secrets of my childhood home. The days that followed my terrifying encounter in the hidden room were filled with a palpable sense of unease. Every creak of the floorboards, every flicker of the lights, sent shivers down my spine. My parents noticed my changed demeanor, but I couldn't bring myself to tell them the truth. How could I explain the malevolence that lay dormant beneath our family home? Sleep became a distant memory as nightmares plagued my nights. Visions of shadowy figures and echoing whispers tormented me, leaving me exhausted and on edge. I became consumed by a relentless need for answers. What had awakened in that room? And why was I the one to stumble upon its secrets? Determined to unravel the mysteries, I delved into research about the history of our house. My quest led me to local archives, where I discovered chilling accounts of inexplicable occurrences reported by previous owners. Stories of poltergeist activity, unexplained disappearances, and tragic deaths filled the pages. The more I read, the more I realized that my childhood home had a dark and sinister past. I couldn't bear the weight of the secrets alone, so I reached out to a renowned paranormal investigator, Dr. Emily Collins. She had dedicated her life to understanding the supernatural and had successfully resolved similar cases in the past. After recounting my experiences, she agreed to help. Together, we returned to the house armed with equipment to document and investigate the paranormal. As we entered the basement, a sense of foreboding washed over me. The door to the hidden room stood silently, tempting us to uncover its secrets once again. Dr. Collins meticulously surveyed the room, her eyes scrutinizing every artifact, every symbol on the walls. She shared her findings, revealing that the symbols belonged to a long-forgotten cult that had practiced dark rituals in the area. The artifacts held residual energy, remnants of the malevolent forces that had been summoned within these walls. As our investigation continued, we encountered chilling phenomena. Objects moved on their own, disembodied voices echoed through the hallways, and cold spots permeated the air. It became evident that the dark forces unleashed by the cult had not been fully contained. With Dr. Collins' expertise, we performed a cleansing ritual, attempting to banish the lingering spirits and seal off the room. The process was intense, but as we completed the final incantation, a wave of calm washed over us. The house felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted. Though the immediate threat had been quelled, I knew that the scars of my childhood home would never fully heal. The memories of those horrifying days would forever linger in the depths of my mind. I made peace with the fact that some secrets are better left undisturbed, and that the darkness within our world can often be more powerful than we dare to imagine. Now, years later, I stand before my childhood home once more. The scars have faded, but the memories remain. It stands as a silent sentinel, concealing the secrets it holds. I no longer fear what lies within those walls, but I can't help but feel a pang of sadness for the innocence lost, and a sense of caution for the darkness that still lurks in the shadows. As I turn away, leaving my childhood home behind, I carry with me the knowledge that some things are better left in the past. The secrets of that house will forever haunt me, a reminder that even the most cherished memories can be tainted by darkness. But as I walk into the future, I am determined to embrace the light and create my own sanctuary, free from the specters of the past.
Have your parents ever walked in on you having intimacy? So recently my mother has been wanting to visit me and my wife at our place. She's been on and I need to see where my babies live kick though, and I'm the last one of us to cave and give her a set of dates where she can visit. Now, my mom is an infamously nosy and an interrupty person. My wife and I are people who enjoy some daily rituals, such as me effing her brains out until she squeals like a little piggy. My mom is not the best at respecting those things. Our most sacred nightly ritual is mine and my wife's nightly unclothed cuddle session. This ritual is scared as we are both very spiritual, and this type of exchange in our truest form allows us to bond, and our love for each other grows stronger the more we cuddle in said manner. My mother seemingly has a nose for when my wife and I have begun our cuddle session, because out of the 4 nights she's stayed with us so far, she has walked in on or otherwise interrupted us every effing night. And no, we haven't done this at the exact same time each night. We've been pushing our cuddle back later and later, and while this isn't the only time at night that my mom has found the need to suddenly ask us how to work the DVD player, or if it's okay to eat the pretzels we have in the cupboard, or if we have another blanket, it is the most annoying time for her to interrupt. I feel like a fool for not realizing that my mom would do this to us all the time, but hey, that's my F up. All I want is to be able to cuddle and talk to my wife for the final hour or two before drifting off to sleep without any interruptions, but alas, that shall have to wait until she leaves, it seems.
Will Smith is going to slap you. What's your plan? Immediately call the Hollywood lawyer and tell him we're rich. Take it and exaggerate it. Fall on the floor. Get knocked out for all I care. It's recorded and millions have already seen it. I take him for all he's worth. I just feel like on Will's part, it was so unprofessional, like he could have handled it behind the curtains. I thought it was a joke because Will was laughing, but Jada obviously wasn't feeling the joke and let Will know, which set him off. Overall, this whole situation was messy and could have been handled differently.
My stupid sister couldn't control her bratty kid, so I took back his Christmas present and kicked him out of my house. My sister and I have always had a strained relationship. I usually just let things go and try to keep the peace. We both have sons who are around the same age. My nephew is 13 and my son just turned 11. For my son's birthday I bought him the new gaming system he has been wanting. He was absolutely thrilled and he played non-stop. My sister is bad with money. I usually have to lend her money for bills and stuff for my nephew. I know my nephew doesn't always get the best Christmas gifts, so this year I went a little crazy and I purchased the same gaming system for him for Christmas. I already had it ready and wrapped under my tree. Yesterday my sister's family came to visit. My son asked me if they could go play video games. I said yes and reminded them to be careful. About 30 minutes later my son came running to me crying. I asked him what was wrong and he led me to the front hall. When we get to the stairs I see the new system smashed on the floor. Someone had thrown it from the upstairs and it was now smashed to pieces. I asked my son what happened and he sobbed and pointed at his cousin. I asked my nephew if he did this and he started to laugh. He said that it was a stupid baby toy and that he saw people break them online. My sister came in and I told her what happened. I explained that this was an expensive system and that her son needs to be disciplined for what he did. I told her I wanted her to pay for what her son broke. She laughed and said no. She says I shouldn't have let them play unsupervised. That it was my fault and that I am a bad parent. She said my son will get over it and that it was not important. Seeing my son sitting on the ground next to his broken system trying to put the pieces back together tore my heart out. I walked over to the Christmas tree and grabbed the system that was meant for my nephew. I pulled the gift wrap off and gave it to my son and told him to go upstairs and set it up. My sister asked me why I was making such a big deal when I already had another one. I then laughed and told her that was her son's Christmas gift. That since it wasn't important and it was just a stupid baby toy, then they obviously won't miss it. I then told them to leave. My nephew realized what happened and began to cry that my son had stolen his system. I said no, his system was the one that he smashed. My sister was livid and told me that I will never see them again. I just said okay and slammed the door. Other family members have now been calling me nonstop and saying I am an a-hole and that I ruined my nephew's Christmas. I don't think so though. My nephew is 13. He is not a stupid kid and he knew what he was doing. I don't care that it was over jealousy, he is old enough to know better. My sister was not going to make the situation right, so I just did what I had to do. They all think I should buy another new system for him, but I don't have that kind of money. Even if I had that money, I wouldn't do it. Poor delivery girl thought my dead brother was a dog. I worked at a vet clinic on weekends for a bit of spending money when I was 16 just in the cattery feeding and cleaning up after cats every Sunday. When my 18-year-old brother died in an accident maybe a year or so into my employment there, I had to quit due to not being able to get out of bed in a stable condition, let alone get out of bed to clean up cat poop. The clinic, once they found out about what happened on the news, were kind enough to order flowers and send them to my house. The bouquet was from a local company that's very popular. The delivery people go out of their way to make sure the flowers are in someone's hands, or at least in a very safe space, before they leave. So a few days after my brother's death, a delivery girl comes to the door with the lovely flowers. My mum was the one to answer the door, but I stood in the hallway behind her, expecting another friend or family member to come to give their support to us. The young girl said, "Hi, these flowers are from the insert name of my vet clinic, I'm very sorry for your loss." She was very sincere, and as my brother's death, him being very young, had made waves in our local community / on the news, I assumed she already knew it was him who'd passed, until she asked what breed was he? Looking back, I wish Mom had made up a dog breed for the poor girl's sake, but Mom simply and sincerely said, "Thank you so much," and human. I had ducked out of the hallway into a nearby room so as to not show the delivery girl the horror on my face as she apologized and left Mom with the flowers. To this day it is one of, if not the only things I can find to smile about when it comes to that entire grief-filled year. But I also think that the poor girl probably relives it constantly. If she ever comes across this, thank you for making me smile despite your probable inner humiliation. I've genuinely always wanted to write a book about things like this that happen during grief and dark moments. If I ever do, hopefully you're all right with me mentioning this classic. We quote, "Thank you," and human very frequently in the household.
What is not a bullet you dodged, but a huge tactical nuke you dodged? I have some acres of woodland that I take care of with a chainsaw to keep a desirable mix of tree species and avoid overcrowding. Often when I cut through the trunk of a tree that's too close to other trees, it just leans against them rather than falling down. Then I have to make a series of angled cuts and let chunks of the trunk slide off, more or less vertically, onto the ground. Eventually, the trunk winds up vertical enough that I can push it toward a clear space and complete the process of felling the tree. Well, a couple years ago, I was getting to that point. Tree was basically vertical, a few thousand pounds of wood balanced on its end, reaching 30 feet up. I made another cut, and the rest of the trunk slid down off at 3 feet or so of trunk that I'd separated it from at the base, and then it started to lean. That sucker was coming down, except it wasn't going the direction I'd planned. No big deal, just move out of the way. Except I'd gotten careless and left a bunch of branches down there at my feet and I was disturbed to find that my legs couldn't move. I was stuck rooted to that spot, which was very close indeed to the way the tree was moving. It wound up just nicking my head on its way down. Another few inches and it would have done a lot more than that. I'm always very careful to make sure the ground is cleared of branches when I do this now.
I found out my fiancé cheated 2 weeks before our wedding. I learned this while at our friend's destination wedding where I can't leave and have to play it cool. My 25 female fiancé, 28 female, and I were supposed to get married in 2 weeks. We've been together over 6 years and lived together most of that time. We have known each other for 8 years now. Relevant to the story, I'm a lesbian and she is bisexual. We've built a wonderful life together, and I was excited to take the next step. I truly thought I knew this person. I'm typing this from the hotel of our good friend's destination wedding. They got married yesterday. Today and tomorrow were supposed to be for fun and to celebrate in the local area. They have not been very fun for me. After the ceremony yesterday, my fiancée got rather intoxicated. She fell asleep like a rock after I helped her wash up and get dressed. She was out. So I took the opportunity to do something I now regret, but at the same time was probably the best decision I ever made. I snooped through her phone. I wish I had a better reason for why I did it, some big Sherlock-level hunch, but I don't. I did it because we're getting married soon and I wanted to see what she was saying to her friends about me and the wedding. She was being a bit more secretive with her phone, which made me curious. I did it for the same reason people wish they had mind-reading powers. I searched her texts for my name. Nothing mind-blowing, and it was actually very positive. I was feeling a little warm and fuzzy. That's when I got the bright idea to search for the word sex. I wanted to see if she talked about our intimate life with her friends. Maybe about what she liked the most or didn't like. Instead, I pulled up texts with a man, a friend of a friend who lives several states away. They send each other photos and SX texted. I kept scrolling up and up until I came across the nail in the coffin. He had traveled to our city so they could meet up for coffee and lovemaking. The evidence was complete as could be, sealed with a selfie of them together that he sent her. She couldn't even be bothered to delete them. I hid in the bathroom and shook like I was possessed. It felt like a nightmare and part of me still hasn't accepted it. So this began the worst 36 hours of my life so far. I couldn't confront her without causing a scene at my dear friend's wedding. So I've pretended that everything is normal. Not very well. I did have a couple nauseous spells I had to explain away. But I've been doing the hugging, kissing, laughing, and I love yous all day while we've all been trying to have fun at this wedding celebration. I feel like I'm dying. I keep playing the texts over in my head and running through what I'm going to say to her the second we get home. I thought about staying in the relationship, partially to avoid the total embarrassment of being that person who canceled a wedding last minute. But I realized I would be setting up my life for failure if I did. There are several things looking back that are red flags, namely the timeline of when she ended her last relationship before starting ours. She swears she broke it off with her old girlfriend before we started dating. The old girlfriend had a different story that I brushed off when my fiancé insisted that she was insane. The old girlfriend does have issues, but I think she may have been telling the truth about this one. I think my fiancé is a serial cheater. I hope I have the strength to make it through tomorrow and the 10-hour trip home, as well as to do what needs to be done. Best part is we also work together at the same small company and just bought a house together. Unraveling this will be difficult. Update: the saga continues with my life looking like a crappy movie, with nothing going as I thought it would. We started the drive home Sunday morning with the newlyweds, stopping partway for brunch with the bride's family. At this point my fiancé had sensed that something was wrong and is getting anxious about why I was being distant. It all blew up when I, stupidly, left my phone on the table and walked away for a moment while we were waiting for food. She tried to access my phone for some reason. I don't think it was nefarious. She was right in front of the groom and may have wanted to take silly photos on my phone. In a previous comment I mentioned that I had changed my password to protect the evidence I had. Well, she did not appreciate that, not at all. She immediately spiraled into a panic attack when I wouldn't tell her why I changed the password. She said, "You've been acting weird and you never change your password." Without a hint of irony, "Are you talking to someone?" was also asked. This was all in front of the groom. I desperately tried to play it off as I was protecting my Christmas present ideas. Normally we allow each other to be secretive with our phones around Christmas. She didn't buy it. I tried to play it cool for the couple and family, but she began texting me, begging me to talk to her right that moment. Then she began crying. I figured this couldn't get any more awkward, so I beckoned her outside. She tearfully asked, "Did I do something wrong?" Dear Reddit, the amount of relief I felt when I said I know what you did. I know about the guy is indescribable. Part of me was happy despite the situation, just from the relief of not hiding this knowledge any longer. Like taking out a festering splinter, she at first acted clueless. That quickly became he's just a friend, then we didn't do anything we only kissed and texted, and it wasn't cheating. She denies even now any intimate contact other than kissing. All excuses devolved into repeated begging for me to stay and get married to her. She didn't even say I'm sorry until I pointed out that she hadn't even apologized in between excuses. I truly do not know this individual. You don't have to believe me, but I literally had some of your words ringing in my ears while she spoke. I held strong on us separating and canceling the wedding. I finally got her back into the restaurant on threat of embarrassing her in front of all these people if we didn't return to our friends, not proud of that verbiage, but she was refusing to leave the parking lot to go back inside. I quickly ate my cold brunch and she stared at hers, shell-shocked. By this point it's painfully obvious to everyone around that something is very wrong. I reassured our friends multiple times that we are okay and the situation has nothing to do with anything they did. I'll tell you more later, but let's just get home for now. I didn't want to tell them the truth right then and subject us all to a long car ride with that knowledge hanging in the air. In an incredible twist of fate, I spend the 10-hour car ride singing and making conversation, and she spends it on the verge of tears and car sick, dry heaving into a sick bag, trying to act normal for our friends. I must have seemed like a psychopath. I was so lighthearted from finally getting the weight off my chest. The groom, bless his heart, tried to bring up our wedding plans multiple times and I redirected with jokes or anecdotes from their wedding. Side note, did you know that 99% of road trip songs are about romance and or breakups? We listened to Adele's Hello from the Other Side twice, once belted by the bride and once by the groom. Get me out of this cliché nightmare. We make it home, and the fun only just begins. I did text the couple to apologize for our weird behavior and inform them about the cheating and cancelled wedding. They have responded with messages of support and understanding. The details are already hazy, but I essentially repeated in no uncertain terms that we are no longer together, the wedding is cancelled, she will be sleeping on the couch and I expect her to move out. She became completely hysterical, following me around the house trying to hug me and repeating phrases, such as "we can fight for this together," and "I love you," say it back. I'm sad to say that things took a very dark turn. She was constantly making threats of self-harm, how she wished to pass away. In addition to the normal kitchen knives, I also have an extensive knife collection and several firearms. I ask her point blank multiple times if she intends to hurt herself and she responds with, "I can do what I want, and you don't care anyway." She watches me clear my firearms so she can't use them and says, "You don't think I'll find another way?" I let her out of my sight for a moment. She goes to my knife collection drawer and takes one I gifted her years ago, a small folding pocket knife. She's crying out that it's hers and I can't take it, she can do what she wants with it. I try to wrestle it away from her and she won't give it up. I gave her an ultimatum, give up the knife or I'll call the police. She refused and I called her bluff, and called 911 using Siri. The moment I dialed 911 the change was immediate. We have a friend who was Baker acted and my fiancé is terrified by their stories. She immediately gave up the knife, apologized, and calmly sat on the couch. She claims she lost herself in the moment then regained control. In her defense she was having a visible panic attack. The police were incredibly kind and professional. They eventually decided to not BA her, since she was now calm and said she was not planning to harm herself. I actually agree that this was the right call. I think seeing the police was enough to tether her back to reality.
Update: am I the jerk for wanting to leave my boyfriend for something his parents said? I couldn't keep up with all the comments, but 99.9% of them said to talk to him, and so I did. He didn't get all defensive or angry. He just listened to what I had to say and we ended up having a great conversation about it. So, yesterday we went on a coffee date. Things were a little awkward at first, so as soon as we sat down, I just straight up told him what happened. I expressed how much it bothered me that he left me all alone with his racist parents without a warning and how terrified I was. He profusely apologized and said he would talk to them about it, and he swore he had no idea that his parents felt this way about black people. I asked him how he didn't know yet he grew up in their homes. They raised him, so he surely must have heard some racist comments from them. He explained to me how during his childhood, all the people in his hometown were white, the neighborhoods were all white, the kids in his school were all white, and all his teachers were white. So race wasn't really a topic that ever came up in their home or school or anywhere he went. Everyone was just white. He said his parents have always been very kind-hearted people and those were the people he thought he was bringing me home to. He didn't think that skin color was something he had to worry about, and it didn't cross his mind that he was bringing a POC to a place that it only had white people. He was truly apologetic for that and said he should have known better. Anyway, we kept talking and he told me about the first time he met a POC in real life. He was 19 years old and he had just moved from his hometown to our city for college. He said he loved meeting people from different places with different cultures and backgrounds and hearing about all their different experiences, which reminded me of when we first met. I thought he was really weird cause he would ask me all these questions about my culture and home country. He honestly had so many questions, some of which I didn't even know the answers to. I googled the population of his hometown and according to the 2022 census, 93% of the population is white. So back then, during his childhood, it was probably 100% white. So, I have chosen to believe him cause I guess he thought his parents would have been as open-minded as he was. Some of you might not agree with this decision, but I've decided to give him a chance to prove himself before ending things with him. But, I pointed out that if he plans to be with me, a black woman, he needs to understand that he cannot turn a blind eye to any discrimination I might face, including discrimination from his own family. I also told him I didn't expect him to cut ties with his family, but it's going to take a while to salvage my relationship with them and that I'm not yet ready to hear an apology from them. He agreed to this and promised to pay better attention and reassured me that he was on my side. I don't know if he has already spoken to his parents, but this morning I woke up to an apology DM from his sister and the dots connected. In her message, she stated that she was shocked to hear her mother's words and that she doesn't believe in that. She just agreed with her cause it was her mother and she didn't know what to do at the moment. His sister is attending college in our city, so I had met her a couple of times before. Like maybe 3 or 4 times, so I'm thinking she was the one who gave their parents the heads up. She and I weren't that close, but the few times we've met, I didn't feel any hint of racism, we were always civil with each other. Anyway, I still haven't responded to her message and I don't think I'm going to for now. I don't even know what to say to her.
As for my boyfriend and I believe we and I had a meaningful conversation.
I'm still not moving in with him, but I think we might be able to maybe work things out. We might not pick up where we left off, but I know we can get back to where we were if we both put in the work. What's the most embarrassing thing you saw someone doing because they thought nobody was watching? When I was in military base training, we used to jog every morning with our drill sergeant. We just started running and were next to a slender part of a forest, when suddenly our drill sergeant made a turn to the left into the forest. The forest was probably 10 meters wide, and we went inside. He told us we won't be running today, and let's chill here in the bushes in the forest, hang out and have fun while smoking some cigarettes. We just had to pay attention to the side where we went in, that no other jogging groups would see us so we and our drill sergeant won't get in trouble. We also had to take care of the other side of the forest exit, as there was a small fence and a sidewalk where civilians sometimes passed. So we were in between the trees, probably 20 young men with our drill sergeant. If somebody would pass from either side and look into the forest, he would have seen us. But we were quite remote there, so we didn't expect anyone to pass. Suddenly, 2 elder women walked along the fence. The sergeant saw it and told us to shut up. We watched those women pass by. They didn't see us, so we continued to chat. After about 5 minutes, the 2 women again came along. She probably brought the other home or something and was heading back. Again, we shut up and watched them walking. When they were at our height, she stopped. They stopped and started looking back and forth, seemingly checking if someone was around. They looked to every side, except to the forest. Then they got unclothed, and started going down on each other in the dirty forest ground. I hold my mouth with both hands shut. The 2 guys next to me both bit me in my arm so they wouldn't make a sound. My cat was the same age as me and celebrated my college graduation. My cat and I are both 23. Every time I left for college I would say goodbye not knowing if he would still be around when I got back. I graduated a month ago and he made it. My sweet cat, Yellow, passed away a few weeks after my graduation. He made it to graduation weekend and was around for the celebrations and got some treats at the party, including lots of milk. He hadn't been doing all that well in the months leading up to it, so unfortunately, as much as it broke our hearts, we made the decision to let him go. I was given the day off of work to spend time with my family and him. He got plenty of love and treats. Yellow lived a very long wonderful life. My parents bought a plot of land in 2002. When they did, they had no idea it came with an added bonus, a cat. Yellow was a stray who had been living off the land for quite some time. Oddly, he was fixed. I'm aware of catch and release programs for feral cats, but Yellow didn't have anything that signified he was a part of a program like that. In the area we lived in, it was unfortunately common for people to abandon pets there. My family cared for several cats over the years. So while we will never know for sure, we assumed he had been abandoned. I was 4, and was of course obsessed with the giant yellow kitty that was hanging around all the time. I kept pointing at him and calling him a yellowy cat, so that is where his full name came from. Yellowy. Yellow was taken to the vet in 2005, and was said to be 5 years old. He was officially part of the family. Yellow loved food. He was obsessed with food. His oddest obsession was cheese. If I ever left any food with cheese unattended, he would immediately steal it. Mac and cheese was his absolute favorite thing to steal, but it was hard to ever be angry with him. Yellow was a pretty boy and he knew it. He loved attention and loved being brushed and petted and would meow his little heart out. When we brushed him, he would spin in circles to make sure he was even. If you were not giving him enough attention, he would hook his paw around your hand and pull you to him to pet him. Yellow's biggest challenge happened a few years after we adopted him. He was struck by a car. He would have passed away, had the lady driving not acted quickly. She scooped him up and carried him to our door, asking if he belonged to us and apologizing profusely. I'm grateful for her every day. She struck him, but that could have happened to anyone. A lot of people would have just left him there, but she saved his life. He woke up while we were on the phone with the vet and wandered over to his food bowl to start eating, despite having multiple serious injuries. He made a full recovery, only losing a few teeth and having a permanent white tuft of fur on his head where the vet had to put a staple. After that incident, he became strictly an indoor cat, though he did protest. Yellow was with us through it all. He was my entire childhood. I have very few memories of times before he was in my life. Yellow survived being abandoned, getting struck by a car, and he lived through 2020. The night after he passed, I had a dream where my grandma told me that she would take care of him. It was very comforting. A few months after his passing, I finally got an apartment that allowed pets, and I decided to go adopt a cat. When I got there, this massive cat escaped the cat room and came up to me. He was a stray that had been picked up off the street, and unfortunately had an injured paw and lost a toe as a result. He had been there the longest. Maybe it's silly, but I felt like Yellow had led him to me in a way. I knew this sweet boy needed my help. I named him Thunderstorm, because his gray fur with black markings reminded me of a storm cloud. I named yet another cat after their fur color. I guess some things never change. Thunder will know nothing but love for the rest of his life, just like Yellow. You mean all of our patients don't have seizures? My fault. Once I worked for this lady who owned a home health agency, and I was running it for her. At first it was not that bad. Margaret liked me and had me doing a lot of things that maybe went above my pay grade, but I didn't mind so much because I was learning a lot and it didn't involve any direct patient care. In 2014, when I first started, she had an LVN named Nena. She and I got along quite well, and we were good work buddies. Sometimes patients would go to her office and she would shut the door. IDK why she bothered to do that when it was obvious that she was admitting them. I wasn't exactly comfortable with that, because you are supposed to be an RN, but at least she was a nurse. After it turned into 2015, though, Boss M decided to put N out in the field, so I was the only one in the office. Shortly after that happened, M caught me on my break and said, "Hey, I need you to do me a favor. There's a patient in your office, and I need you to take his vitals and write down all his meds and put him in the system." I said, "Margaret, are you actually trying to get me to admit this guy? That is so far out of my scope of practice that I would lose my massage license and maybe go to jail." "Oh, Common, you know you can do it, you have the knowledge and experience." I said, "You can try to flatter me all you want, But I'm not doing it, you're an RN. Why don't you do it so nobody gets in trouble with the state? She said, okay, I will give you a $50 bonus for every one of those you do. I said, really? $50? Wow, okay then, I'm in. I asked her how exactly I as to come up with diagnoses, though with no MD report. She said to just Google the meds and see what they are prescribed for and get the diagnosis from that. That is so illegal. I almost called my mom to ask her to put money in my commissary. Lol. So anyway, I did end up doing it that one time. But I knew I had to outsmart her for ethics' sake, or I would have been stuck doing those for the rest of eternity and probably end up with legal problems for $50 a pop. I had to do something, but I wasn't sure what that was. Finally, I decided to deliberately make an error. The patient said he was on gabapentin. I know what that is, and I also know why it is prescribed. It could be for multiple reasons, usually pain or anxiety. So I put down seizure disorder, the rarest problem it's prescribed for. When Em saw what I had put in, she started yelling at me, you know that's for neuropathy. Nerve pain. I said, well, I don't know that actually. There are a bunch of uses for gabapentin and seizure codes pay more than neuropathy ones, don't they? According to the coding guide they do. I know how important it is for you to make you more money, right? And guess what? You know, I noticed that more than half of our patients are taking that. So I went back and changed all their diagnoses to say seizure disorder, and exported all the corrected assessments to the state already. Aren't you proud of me? Of course I did nothing of the sort, lol. She literally lost her wig, and screamed, do you have any idea how many ADRs I'm going to get? It will take forever. I will have to have someone scan every last one of those records and submit them to Medicare. Meanwhile, they won't pay me. Error. I shrugged and said, well, I would probably estimate around 50, if the numbers add up. Okay, she screamed, that's it. I'll never ask you to do that ever again. And give me back that $50. Really? Oh no, are you sure? Oof, wow, I'm so sorry I messed up. My bad. I know she saw me laughing at her as I walked away. There were cameras everywhere, after all. Women who gave the creepy a chance. How did it go? There was a guy that came into my restaurant a few times a week for lunch. He did this for a little over a month, so he became a regular. He had asked me out every time I brought his bill. He always asked in a lighthearted way and never seemed upset or anything when I turned him down. I assumed that after the first few asks, he maybe thought of it as more of an inside joke at that point. He always gave me weird vibes but seemed nice enough, so I thought I might have just been making assumptions because of his appearance and wasn't being fair. One time that he asked, I decided randomly to agree and give him a shot. Why not, I thought. He was always super kind and I had gotten rather used to the awkwardness I felt being around him. He seemed so excited and I asked him to leave his number on the receipt and I would call or text him when I wasn't busy to set something up. So it wasn't really much of a joke to keep asking me out. I mostly figured that though. A few days later I hadn't texted him yet to set anything up or even give him my number, and I get a text only a few minutes after walking into my house after I got home from work. It said, hey, it's me from the restaurant. I know it's a long shot, but I'm free tonight and bored. Wanna hang out? If you're free, that is. I asked him how he got my number. He said I gave it to him the night I agreed. I absolutely know I didn't. I got really creeped out but decided not to confront him about it and just play like I'm a ditz and believe that I must have done that. I just didn't remember because it was busy. I told him that I wasn't free to hang out that night, that I was going to be working later to help cover a shift and then would be pretty pooped by the time I was off. A few minutes passed before he responded. He said, why are you lying to me? I just responded with what? Lol. He said, I know you were home. If you didn't want to hang out tonight you could have just said so. Alarm bells rang in my head. I thought, there's no way he's outside my house. He is just trying to call my bluff. Creepy but not a full-blown stalker. But I felt exposed. I felt the crawling on my skin that only burns into you when someone is staring at you. The vulnerable pulses that are felt only by prey. I looked out through the blinds of my bedroom and he was parked right outside my house. I could see his face lit up by the phone screen. He was so close. I texted him and said, "Ahaha, you caught me. How did you know I was bluffing? I'm sorry. I do want to hang out soon, I'm just not feeling up to it tonight." And called 911. The police showed up and went up to his car and talked to him for a bit. He drove away a few minutes later and then the officers came to my door. They told me that they acted like a random neighbor complained about a strange car. They didn't implicate anyone but made it seem like it was an older person, so probably not me. They took his plate information but asked him politely to move so he didn't upset anyone in the neighborhood, and he complied. I went to my friend's house that night and filed a restraining order the next morning. But by that time he had already texted me a bunch of personal information about myself and called me kitten. I later found out that he most likely got my number from the shift sheet behind the hostess counter, because several co-workers had seen him at different times snooping back there and kindly stopped him. He, I guess, grabbed a roll of silverware claiming that the server hadn't left him any and he didn't want to bother anyone because he knew they were busy, so just grabbed it himself. This stopped anyone from suspecting him of anything odd, and that his car had been parked at my house almost every night. I don't know how he got my address, but I assume he must have followed me. He must have been full on stalking me for a while. He did come into my work a day or two later for lunch acting like everything was normal. What is your most uncomfortable Uber experience? I took an Uber to a gay sauna. I had a horrible day at work and I thought I could treat myself to visiting a local gay sauna in my area. Relax in the steam room, use the jacuzzi, and if it comes to that, have a fair share of fun with other men. Mindlessly, I took the Uber app and just typed the name of the sauna as it was pouring rain outside and I didn't want to walk there. It's a 15-minute drive. I go out, meet the driver, he starts driving, and I hear the GPS screaming the name of the sauna with her automatic robot voice. The driver asks, "Oh, what is it?" To which I reply, "It's just a club." I thought, ambiguous enough, then silence. About 5 minutes in the ride the driver suddenly says, "I don't think you should be going there, mate." Taken aback, I say, "Excuse me?" And he literally says it's not too late to repent for your sins and stop going to those places. It is a sin, you know? I could not believe it. I have never been this embarrassed in my life. I just let out a yeah. And decide to stay silent. After a few more minutes he starts talking about his local church and how they welcome people from every background. He tells me about the social groups they run and how I can change things if I'm powerful enough and I've got the right support. We arrive to the destination and I notice that instead of parking in front of the place, he parks about 300 meters from it. I just left the car without saying a single word. Of course I didn't repent and had a very nice time in the sauna, but honestly what an uncomfortable situation. What can no one know about you? I accidentally tricked my neighbor into thinking I was depressed when in reality I was getting off to people crying. I have this fetish for people crying. Recently, I've been delving more into that side of myself, trying to really see what gets me off. That all culminated in me just watching videos of people crying and wanking off to that. Since I live alone in my apartment and worked at home, I use the TV in my living room. Unfortunately, I underestimated how thin the walls were. I was about to head out to go get some coffee with friends but saw that someone had left a basket of snacks and chocolate on my door. I thought nothing of it, maybe someone just moved in or something. No other door had this basket, so I don't know why I briefly thought that, but I do have a penchant for dismissing things that aren't actively affecting my life right at that moment, so I just put the basket in my house and went about my day. I got home and snacked on a few of the chocolate and went about my nightly routine of watching those videos. Then I kept getting more and more snacks put out on my front door. Almost every day. Nothing major like the basket I got on the first day, but just little chocolate bars put out on the floor. I just ate the snacks as soon as I see them in front of my door and almost completely neglected the big basket I got. This went on for a week or so. Then, today, I woke up to someone knocking on my door. When I opened it, it was my neighbor. I've seen her a few times when we coincidentally get out the door at the same time and we've greeted each other. She was holding another basket of snacks and asked me if I was alright from last night and if I got her other basket. Confused, I said I was alright and asked why she's giving those to me. Then, she looked a bit embarrassed and admitted to hearing loud crying coming from my apartment since she lived next door. She also asked if I saw the note in her basket. I didn't remember seeing a note, but I was too embarrassed to continue this conversation and politely thanked her before accepting her basket and closing the door. Sure enough, there was a note in the first basket that was somewhat buried by the chocolate. If I'd eaten a bit more I would have realized. It detailed how she'd been hearing me cry for a bit and then she went on to describe the story of her battles with depression. She then said how she'd love to get to know me and is there if I wanted to talk about it. What's the meanest thing a doctor or nurse has said to you? A few years ago I was really sick. I kept getting UTIs like 2 or 3 times a month. I had gone to doctors who had dismissed me as having too much sex or that I didn't clean myself well after the bathroom. Neither was the case. I eventually landed at urgent care again on a Friday evening in tears because I had yet again another UTI. Thankfully the doctor eased nice that night and she sent me home with antibiotics. But something was wrong. A few days later my right side was hurting and the antibiotics weren't helping like they should have. The urgent care doctor called and said she had made me an appointment with a urologist in town. He was the only one available on short notice. My cultures had come back positive with a strain of E. coli called Espel. It was resistant to all oral antibiotics and I needed to see a urologist ASAP. So I went to the urologist and I was emotional because I was scared. They made me do another sample and after I tell the doctor why kidney really hurts he told me to stop being hysterical. That the urgent care doctor didn't know what she was talking about and I didn't have an infection. I just needed to go on a diet and lose some weight. He even referred me to a psychiatrist. Well, freaked out I went home and my boyfriend took me to the where all they could do was refer me to an outpatient clinic for a 7-day course of shots for an antibiotic called Invents. I got the shots and kinda felt better but something was still off. 1 week after finishing the shots my BF says you rolled to hug him and I burned him. My fever was so high I wasn't fully responsive. He grabbed me and drove me to the hospital. Turns out the shots only masked my symptoms, didn't cure me. I was now septic with a super resistant strain of bacteria. The doctors had a hard time bringing down my fever which was 105 when I got to the I don't remember because I didn't wake up for 5 days. By the time I woke up I had had several IVs go bad and my veins were shot from the infection. I had to get a PICC line. I lost 30 pounds in a month and spent most of that in hospital. I recovered but not before I lost some function in my right kidney. All because I had a doctor that was a total ass. I now have PTSD from the experience. And it turns out my estrogen was low which is why I was getting the infections in the first place. But no one tested my hormones because I was in my 20s and too young for that test. What is your biggest WTF story? I have an elderly neighbor who lives upstairs. I don't know his name so I'm going to call him Fred for the sake of this story. Fred is a strange individual. He plays piano at 3 in the morning. He just glares at you if you say something to him. He doesn't speak to anyone really. I've only seen him interacting with a human once, when he was yelling at a salesman. I don't know who Fred is, because he's my only neighbor with an unmarked mailbox. Based on Fred's observable behavior I would definitely label him as a recluse. About a month ago I got home, pulled into my parking lot and turned off my car. I heard something that sounded like a gunshot, so I waited in my car for a bit then finally decided to venture out into the unknown. I saw Fred crouched beside one of my neighbor's cars with something in his hand. I noticed the vehicle's tire had been slashed. As I walked past, I asked Fred if his tire got popped. He just stared at me with an eerie emotionless glare, the kind of glare that makes you feel like he's looking straight through you, so I promptly started walking towards my door. Before I went inside I looked back and saw that he had been holding a knife. This past weekend, Fred decided to slash another tire for a reason unbeknownst to me, but this time Fred's tire victim saw it happen and confronted him about it. Fred and the man broke out in a heated argument and Fred threatened to end his victim. The man went inside and immediately called the police. A little bit later the police showed up and knocked on Fred's door. Fred walked out of his door, saw that there were police officers, apparently felt like he was trapped, so he proceeded to quickly pull out a firearm and pull the trigger at himself, taking his own life there and then. What do you think mankind's greatest achievement is? If you really think about it, airplanes are effing wild, man. Discovering fire. Ain't nothing would have existed if our caveman granddaddies didn't F around and learn to burn crap. I would say the scientific method is the single greatest achievement of humankind. Nothing has caused more change in such a short time, and all the major changes in society we have experienced over the last 500 years can be in some way attributed to the scientific method. This objective, testing and evidence-based worldview has directly led to modern communications, the internet and smartphones. You can talk to anyone, anywhere, anytime. Translate any living language, access the sum of all human knowledge in an instant. Modern vaccinations and antibiotics. We have eradicated smallpox worldwide, nearly the same for polio too. Tuberculosis, whooping cough, mumps, and a great number of other diseases are almost unheard of in modern industrialized nations. Though sadly these are resurfacing due to the great stupidity of a few. Nitrogen fixation for agriculture. The Haber-Bosch process, which allows the fixation of atmospheric nitrogen into a solid form for fertilizer. This development enabled food production on an unprecedented scale, allowing the Earth's population to grow from 1.6 billion in 1900 to over 7 billion today. The moon landing. We strapped 3 guys to a skyscraper full of explosives, chucked them at another planet and brought them back again. We did that using less computing power than a calculator watch, and we did it less than 10 years after we decided to go. Electricity. As destructive as fossil fuels have been to the environment, they have enabled incredible changes in the standard of living for low to middle income people. Electrification of the US allowed for industrial growth, and the rise of the middle class. We know better today, and now we are using the scientific method to discover new, cleaner energy solutions. For the future. All of these incredible human achievements were made possible by a rigorous intellectual philosophy that demands we observe the world around us, question everything, test hypotheses, and form conclusions based only on the evidence. Written language followed closely by the McRib.
What was normal in the 1990s but rare or non-existent now? Taking your disposable camera to get developed, and having no idea if any of your pictures were even usable until you got the pictures back. My senior year of high school I carried a disposable camera with me pretty much all the time and would take just dumb candid shots of my friends eating lunch or mid-sentence. Everyone hated it. Now when I post a throwback picture everyone is.
Am I wrong for telling my brother he cannot stay with me over Christmas if he brings his prosthetic leg? My younger brother has a prosthetic leg. I think it is creepy as heck and I have no idea where he got it. I'm reasonably certain that it is something I would rather not know. To be clear here, my brother has 2 perfectly healthy legs still attached to his body. He just has this thing he takes with him everywhere. I don't know why, I don't want to know. Before you ask, yeah, it is probably a mental health thing. He wanted to stay with me rather than our parents while he is home for the holidays. I said he was welcome to stay, as long as he doesn't bring that thing into my house. He said it wasn't a big deal and that he would leave it in his luggage. I agreed on the condition that if I saw it outside of his luggage in my home then I had the right to destroy it. He backtracked on staying with me and is at our parents' house, where he is miserable. They still treat him like a little boy instead of a guy who is almost 30. He called me again after supper and asked to please stay with me. I said he could as long as we, together, take his thing and put it into a storage unit until he leaves. I get the key. He won't do it. He says that I'm being a jerk for not letting him stay with me. I think he needs to get therapy or medication. Or both. Or a girlfriend, boyfriend, dog, cat, hamster. Something. Just not a goddamn prosthetic leg.
Try and rob me? Enjoy my vicious guard dog hunting you. The first time this happened to me was about 15 years ago and it happened again about 3 years ago. It was fairly late at night and I was still up watching TV. I heard some noises from my patio that couldn't have been the usual animal noises. I turned the TV and the lamp beside me off, reached into the drawer of the end table and got my weapon. As soon as I did this, my dog, Buster, immediately jumped down and moved to the back door. Peeking through the curtain, I quickly spotted an uninvited guest moving around on the patio. I couldn't discern if the person was armed or not, so, in a moment of using my common sense, I eased the door open just a couple of inches. Buster was already very aware that someone was outside and was starting to whine and attempt to go outside. As is his usual reaction to strangers in his territory, he pushed the door open and rushed out. To put it mildly, the next 30 to 45 seconds were pure bedlam. Buster yipped once and then all I could hear was screeching, growls, and crashes as the intruder was tripping over everything on the patio trying to escape. He finally found an exit and ran like hell to the woods in my backyard with Buster in close pursuit. Entering the meager protection of the woods, the intruder made his way to the 6-foot chain-link fence surrounding my property, and that was where Buster's last contact was. Mind you, all this took place in a span of just 4 to 5 minutes, but it was long enough and noisy enough to rouse my neighbors on my left and right to come out to check things out. Honestly, I have never heard such terrified screeching and screaming that would be intruder made. After discussing things with my neighbors, I decided to call the police, and after they arrived, we walked through the route the intruder took in his escape from the dog from Hal and found where he'd went over my fence. A fairly large spread of blood spatters and torn clothing were all over the place. Police later picked him up after the hospital contacted them. One of the good things that resulted from this encounter provided was, through word of mouth, everyone that was prone to shop at the midnight swap shop avoided my house. Oh yeah, I failed to mention that Buster is a 90-pound boxer pit mix, has proven to be the most protective and territorial dog I've ever had in my life. At 22, I lost the love of my life. How do I move on? I am a 25-year-old woman who experienced the tragic loss of my boyfriend at the age of 22. Despite the reassurances from friends that I am young and will find love again, I knew deep down that I did not want or believe it was possible. The love we shared was incredibly special and felt like we had lived a lifetime together, only to have it abruptly taken away. This wasn't my first experience with love, so I had a point of comparison for previous relationships. But with him, I just knew he was the one, even though I had never believed in soulmates before. Our breakup was strange and complicated. He seemed to suffer from dissociative episodes, possibly connected to a mental health issue like schizophrenia. He abruptly asked me to leave one morning, and our conversations afterwards were confusing and inconsistent. I believed he needed space to work through his issues and we would eventually reunite. Sadly, 3 months after our breakup, he passed away. Since then, I have been in constant agony for the past 2.5 years. Some days are better than others, and I have found a sense of purpose that keeps me going. However, I don't truly feel like I am living. I exist to fulfill my purpose but have lost the joy of being alive. I understand that he would have wanted me to be happy and love myself, just as he loved me. But I'm only human, and I can't help but feel jealous of friends getting married or seeing happy families. I fear being left behind as my friends enter into relationships and settle down. My beliefs have shifted since his passing. I find myself exploring Reddit threads about near-death experiences, hospice accounts, and different religious beliefs. I seek validation and signs from the spiritual realm. While some signs have been apparent, they pale in comparison to the extraordinary experiences shared by others. I question the internationality of these experiences and the motives of those who share them, as many posts seem attention-seeking. The future terrifies me. I have completely revised my life plans and want to dedicate myself to philanthropy. But the pain of the life I envisioned with him still lingers, making it difficult to move forward. Some days, the pain is so overwhelming that I contemplate not wanting to live anymore. Yet, I push myself to continue, focusing on the things I can still accomplish before joining him in death. I miss him deeply, and I yearn for his presence. This reality without him is incredibly difficult to bear. I ache for supernatural experiences, hoping to connect with him in some way. Yet, these experiences have not manifested to the extent I desire, despite reading countless books on grief and spiritual encounters. I can't help but feel dissatisfied when comparing my own experiences to what others describe on Reddit. My pain is unrelenting, and my desire for supernatural encounters persists. I long for something more because without him, this reality feels incomplete.
My mom keeps lying about WHO. My father truly is. This is a very emotionally draining subject, but I need to vent/get advice from outsiders. I, 22, have a very complicated and messy relationship with my mother, 54. Growing up, I believed my father was a military man from America. We do not live in America, named Alex. We had visited him when I was a toddler, and had planned to move to the US to live with him. Then, according to my mother, she and he fought and refused to speak to me or her again. I went on to believe that he had abandoned me and that my mother had done everything she could to get us into contact again. She spent the next 14 years saying how he had refused to sign my birth certificate, that he had been emailed our location and how to contact us every time we moved, and that she didn't understand why he didn't want me anymore. She had also told me he had no social media and that she had tried looking but found nothing. As the title suggests, she had lied about everything. When I was around 15 or 16, I decided to look for him myself, as I had always felt something was off and wanted to know what happened. It took less than 5 minutes to find him on Facebook. I was shocked, and when I saw him with his children at Disney World, I was devastated. Alex looked so normal and happy, and I couldn't wrap my head around why he could be so seemingly good to his other children and not me. So I decided I wouldn't message him before trying to hear it from my mother again. I thought she was lying to protect me, and maybe she was trying not to hurt me, and Alex was not the man I thought he was. After having a very intense yelling match, she finally tells me the truth: Alex isn't my father. She then explained that I was conceived on a one-night stand and that she knew nothing but his first name. I was then sat down by her and her best friend and told to get over it as she was trying to protect me and give me a nicer version of my father. I was also told not to tell my aunt as my mother was embarrassed. I wasn't allowed to talk about it for the next few years. If I did, or someone else brought it up, my mother would become defensive, and we would fight until I decided to drop it. I felt so alone and isolated. I was also made to feel guilty about how I found out and that I had ruined her plan of sitting me down and explaining it all to me. It took a toll on my mental health tremendously, and as much as I wanted to believe her, I just couldn't. But I also had nowhere else to live and knew keeping the peace and trying to drop it was better. I tried, I did. But then I downloaded TikTok and found out about home DNA tests. Last year, I saw a TikTok of a girl from my country finding her brother by doing a DNA test, and I decided to do one. But I could only do it this year due to life getting in the way. To my surprise, my mother was very encouraging and even offered to pay for it as my birthday present. I couldn't believe it. It was like a switch had been flipped, and then suddenly, I could talk about it and ask questions. She told me everything, the little she knew about him, and seemed excited about me finding him. I took her up on her offer and, 2 weeks later, spat into a tube and sent it off. I then spent 2 months daily checking for updates, looking up other people's stories, and imagining how we would officially meet. It's unrealistic, I know, but I honestly wanted to believe that all the emotional damage would be fixed just by meeting him and that I could move on with my life as an adult with 2 parents. It was a euphoric feeling seeing that little tracker move up little by little each week until, finally, the matches were in. All my matches were of second cousins, and all their information was private, so I couldn't do anything besides message them and pray that they respond. Luckily, the people I have spoken to thus far have been amicable but also very confused. None of them know what I'm talking about and have no link to a man named Max, the name she gave me of my father. I want to assume that it's just because it's a big family, or maybe he had lied about his name to her, but considering how my mother is acting now, I'm not sure. It's like we're back to square one. She has gone from being very open and compassionate to defensive and annoyed. Every time I tell her one of my cousins messaged me back, she gets nervous and snippy. She's also changing her story in small ways that feel suspicious. For example, when asked about his name, she used to be adamant that it was Max and that she knew he wasn't lying as his friend was dating hers and that they also called him Max. Now she says that she isn't sure that no one else called him Max near her and that it's possible he lied. She also keeps changing from I could pick him out of a lineup if I saw him to no, I don't remember what he looks like. It happened so long ago. I honestly don't know how to feel. I want to believe her, but I just can't. There's something wrong, and I know she's keeping something from me. I think she believed/hoped that maybe I wouldn't connect with anyone, but I don't know. I honestly don't know how I would be able to forgive her and know that it would destroy what's left of our relationship if she's lying. I love her, but I cannot understand how she believed making me believe my father had chosen to abandon me was a better reality than the truth. Something's wrong, and I don't know what to do.
What plan failed because of one small thing that was overlooked? A fort in a Brazilian beach had a secret door, so that some important people could escape by boat if the fort was invaded. They just forgot to think of something to do if they were attacked during the low tide. The Hatton Garden heist. Never a good idea to drive your own vehicle, complete with registration plates in full view, slowly past the crime scene to scope it out mid-robbery. The NASA Genesis experiment that was meant to collect solar wind particles emanating from the sun. The capsule that was bringing the particles back to Earth didn't deploy parachutes because some idiot installed a sensor upside down.
My date gossiped about me on her TikTok, so I revealed her OnlyFans to her parents. I have known this girl for a while since we were in the same friend groups. She's a nice person, attractive, and honestly, I've always enjoyed my talks with her. It came to the point where I manned up and a few weeks ago, I asked her out on a date. I figured, if she says no then it wouldn't be that bad. But to my surprise, she actually agreed. I was excited and prepared for the date like crazy. We went on a date and honestly, I thought it was awesome. We went out to dinner, had drinks, and spent the rest of the night talking, and we even took a walk on a walking bridge over the town's lake. I dropped her off and was elated. As soon as I dropped her off I asked her should we go again in a few weeks? And she agreed. Then she said, I love this date so much I think I love you. Her statement made me blush and maybe even made me hard, but I thought that I found the girl of my dreams. However, that night when I was scrolling through TikTok on my bed, a post from her appeared on my For You page. Essentially, she said in the post, getting ready for a date I don't want to go to. I watched the entire video where she was gossiping about me to her viewers and how much of a dork I am. She said that she was going out with me because she knew I had money that could make her night exciting. The video was like a bucket of ice water being thrown on my head. I was so freaking happy, and I just found out she didn't even want to go on a date with me. I kept scrolling through her account and the videos I saw were just her dancing and showing off her body for views. I was glad she lied to me because I didn't need a girlfriend whose OnlyFans link is in their bio. I thought about confronting her, but I figured I could do things more exciting. I had the perfect revenge plan for her. My wife told me to shut my mouth in front of a bunch of people at a kid's birthday party. My wife and I are at odds lately over her sister-in-law, who is also her best friend, who is married to her brother. Long story short, she bends over backwards to accommodate their every ask, including babysitting, errands etc. This extends to volunteering me to help them without my knowledge or consent etc. She never sees my point of view or agrees with any criticism of them I have. We were at my nephew's birthday party today. My sister-in-law is the one who's hosting it, so my wife is super keen for things to go well. Things were going okay. My daughter, 3, was a bit upset because her balloon animal had accidentally been popped, so she's standing with my wife getting a cuddle, and a boy, older than her, 5 or 6, sprints into her and knocks her over. She's crying obviously, and I pick her up. My wife is making a joke of it saying oh she needs to watch where she's going. I said back to her don't blame her for getting bowled over by the bigger boy. Now, apparently the mother of this other kid was in earshot, which prompted my wife to tell me, in front of one of her other best friends and a couple of other guests, to shut my mouth. Then she had the cheek to tell me to not have a moody face. 15 minutes before this post, I sent an email to a divorce lawyer for a consultation. I've finally reached my limit. Update, I spoke to my solicitor first thing this morning, and we had a good talk. He knows that I'm angry and upset at the situation, and he says that he will get myself and my wife in for a consultation if we decide to go down that route. The issue in Scotland is that for a divorce where only one party wants out, it can take upwards of a year to get it, and evidence of separation in that period, unless both parties agree to unreasonable behavior as the reason for the courts granting the divorce. Long story short, I can't proceed without her buy-in, if I want it resolved fast. So I took my daughter to my mum's after this, and then sat my wife down. I told her that yesterday's situation was absolutely unacceptable, and that if I had told her to shut her mouth in front of my friends, that I'd be getting crucified from everyone we know. I told her she was lucky I kept my mouth shut at the party, and that I didn't give an F about how sister-in-law would have taken it. We fought again about sister-in-law, and again, she defended her actions, saying that I'm the selfish one who won't help out my family when they need it. I then did the, perhaps petty, move of dropping divorce leaflets I'd printed from my solicitor's website in front of her. I said to her I absolutely want to help my family, and this is how I do it. I told her about how I was tired of playing third wheel in my own marriage, and I told her that I was not prepared to subject my daughter to a lifetime of this subservience. Finally, it looks like what I've said has had an impact. She cried and I think she was close to having a panic attack. This made me feel guilty, because fundamentally I don't think she's a bad person. She's just brainwashed into thinking sister-in-law is the second coming of the Messiah. So she promised that when I've finished work today we can have a serious talk about things, and she will listen to my concerns. Right now I'm not buying it, but I owe her and my daughter at least a chance to sort things out, so I'll see where it goes. To answer some questions folks had, I know this seemed like an overreaction to something, but you've got to understand this was the latest in a long line of sister-in-law related issues. Some folks have asked if my wife is gay and in love. I have thought about this as a possibility. I didn't ask her yet, but I may tonight. It certainly seems logical given how passionate she gets about it. Update 2. So we sat down last night for the crunch talks. I have to give her credit where it's due. She apologized for what she said at the party, and she said that she'd also have considered divorce if I'd done the same to her. I reiterated to her that my issue is that she completely makes herself subservient to sister-in-law at our expense. I pointed out how messed up it was that she didn't immediately take our daughter's side in this incident. The collision was accidental, I think, but I told her that to blame the little one was out of line, which she accepted. I then asked her outright if she had any sort of romantic feelings for sister-in-law. She squirmed and looked a little uncomfortable. She said that a long time ago at the end of high school there had been a drunken kiss on a night out, but nothing beyond that. She sort of played the angle that she didn't want anyone, especially her brother, to know about it, and that's why she bends over backwards to make sure sister-in-law is happy. I asked her if sister-in-law had ever threatened to reveal this incident, but she denies that it's even been brought up. She just thinks that if the wider family knew, it'd bring up a lot of weirdness. She swears that she has no interest in having any kind of relationship with sister-in-law, and that she's straight. I told her I didn't care about what she did that long ago, but that it needed to stop impacting our relationship in the present because I am the thinnest of thin hairs away from walking away forever. She, surprisingly, apologized again, and said that she'd really try to work on it. I told her that I needed to see some proof of that, so she can consider herself on probation. I told her that if I feel that it's happened again, I'll be taking our daughter to stay at my mum's. She accepted this, so we're proceeding cautiously. Sorry if this isn't the update you were all hoping for, but I think it's the best thing for the three of us right now.
My entitled brother thinks he is bailing us out for paying rent and refused to pay his bills. So, my mother snapped and put him through 5 stages of grief. Brother has been mooching off of my mom and I. She and I co-own our house since 2017. He lived rent-free for 4 years. Finally, my mom managed to force him to pay his form of rent by paying some utility bills, a total of about $450 a month, since 2021. He has never paid his bills willingly. Every month he demands to know why he has to pay the amount and demands proof of the cost, as if my mom was trying to swindle him for some reason. And every time he has finally given us the money for the bills, he has told us he was bailing us out since we must be broke. Why else would we be making him pay for us? Recently, he has been going off about how he can't wait to leave the house and he wants to save his money to move out, but he simply can't with the cost of all these bills weighing him down. My mother told him since he is so serious about moving out, she will gladly pay for his portion of the bills. She works seasonally, and all he would need to pay was his car insurance. She said she would give him until May 31st to save up as much as he could. He would then need to move out. Since that agreement was made, entitled brother has gone on 2 trips out of state. One was a 4-day bachelor party in New Orleans, has gone to poker nights with his friends multiple times, refuses to so much as wash a dish, and leaves a greasy mess wherever he goes in the house. Meanwhile, my mom has worked 6 days a week to make enough money to cover his expenses. And yet, entitled bro hasn't thanked her once. Every time she asks him to do the simplest task, he ignores her or claims he forgot despite how often she reminds him. Today, she finally snapped. His one bill that he's responsible for was due 4 days ago and he never paid her. She texted him and reminded him verbally many times. She asked via text one last time today and he finally responded by asking her to give him a receipt so she can prove his insurance costs what she claimed it cost, and he never sent the money. She lost it, and said she is sick of catering to him without so much as a thank you. She said she wants peace and he is no longer worth the trouble she goes through. She said she is removing him from the car insurance tomorrow and that he no longer has until the end of May to move out because now he is 3 weeks. That's it. She's threatened to kick him out before, and hasn't gone through with it yet, but this time felt different because I have never seen her go nuclear like that before. An entitled bro must have felt that same way because he went through the 5 stages of grief about 100 times during that fight. He screamed, cried, accused, name-called, tried to pull me in to defend him, tried to pull in his dad to defend him, tried to call my mom's sisters to defend him, claimed getting his own insurance was an emotional burden, claimed she needs professional help because she is obviously out of her mind, said that she obviously doesn't care about him. Otherwise, why would she so cruelly deprive him of such valuable resources? He went on and on for 3 hours, and she didn't budge. I don't want to get my hopes up that she'll stick to that 3-week deadline, but this is the closest she's come to evicting him. I hope this will scare him into leaving before she has to.
F you pay me, I need to go to this wedding. My 28M family and I are currently going at it over my sister's 30F wedding. This situation has festered so badly that I am not planning on going to the wedding or home for the holidays this year and will go to my girlfriend's family instead. This thing started 4 years ago. My sister got married, I was a groomsman and very involved in the process. I was never that close with my ex-brother-in-law, but he was a decent enough guy. So in July of 2022 my sister and her ex-husband divorced. This was due to her having an affair with her current fiancé. My parents do what they always do with my sister and excuse whatever bullshit she pulls. I live far from home, so I typically only take one trip home a year. Well, last Christmas I was home and she brings this guy over to my parents. They called themselves fiancé, which again was like 4 months after my sister got divorced. I wasn't having it and didn't talk to the guy and went on a walk for most of the night. Before he left, the guy wanted to speak to me and asked if I'd consider being a groomsman. I pretty much told him no. That I didn't know him, wasn't going to spend the money and more than likely wouldn't be going to the wedding. My sister found out and blew up at me and I unloaded in front of our parents. I pretty much asked my parents if they planned on paying for a second wedding in 3 years. They told me it wasn't my business. We went at it about the whole situation and I left back for NY earlier than I intended. I've declined my sister's invite to the wedding. Her fiancé texted me saying how the family is going to be upset if I'm not there. I didn't respond until he called and I told him basically to get lost. I didn't plan to drop $1,000 on some tacky wedding between cheaters. My parents told me they were going to do this Christmas with the new in-laws to get to know them better. I laughed my ass off at this after they told me I was invited if I wanted to come. But if I couldn't go, it's okay because I would be coming home for the wedding in February. I guess nobody had told them yet, but they blew a gasket. My mom especially. Saying that she had plans for family pics and our family would ask questions. I told her that if they wanted to pay for my plane ticket, hotel, alcohol and extra expenses then I'd go. If not, then I'm not going. My dad said they would not pay for me to come. I said, so you'll pay for a second wedding but not a plane ticket? He got pissed and hung up. My mom has been texting me the last week trying to convince me. I said she can answer all the questions and take her pictures with her family. We have not really spoken in months besides my mom's text and I just want to know if I was the here?
What made the popular kid at school the unpopular kid? A popular guy in my year pissed himself during an exam in our gym hall. Unfortunately for him, the biggest eye hole in our year was sitting directly behind him. He immediately stood up and yelled "P pissed himself." He proceeded to get teary-eyed and say it's my energy drink. It spilled over and over before the exam supervisor literally dragged him out of the hall. 2 weeks later he returned to school the unpopular kid and kept a low profile for a while until it eventually died down and he climbed the social ranks once more. That is until an episode of The In-Betweeners, a popular TV show in the UK, aired in which one of the main characters shits himself in the exam hall and it reminded everyone of what happened, effectively nuking his popularity all over again. She made fun of a girl with cancer, made a joke like, "Why don't you ask your mom to buy you a wig, I can see your scalp," and overnight, she was the least liked person in school, and 100% deserved it. One of the kids at our school lived with his grandma cause his parents died. D-head and a group of his mates started harassing the old lady whenever she came to pick him up. Principal was reported this and they ended up getting expelled altogether.
What's the wildest thing an old person has casually mentioned to you in conversation? One guy told me how he made his money in life. I almost couldn't believe it. I work at a retirement home, so old people saying crazy things is kind of just a part of my daily routine. One of my favorite old heads was this guy Sanders. He was super sharp for someone his age, and he was aware that since he was old, he could get away with saying things that someone my age would probably get fired for. He used this ability to crack some of the funniest dirty jokes I've ever heard. He seriously could have been a comedian. He was also a bit of a Casanova at the retirement home. He was super loaded, so he definitely could afford to be living on his own. But he told me that living at the retirement home was like being in college again, surrounded by single women. He would always be telling me about which girl he was seeing at the time. I know they are old, but believe me, they still can get frisky, especially Sanders. The one thing that Sanders never talked about was his job. He didn't really have any family visiting or anything, and I knew he was paying for the retirement home himself, which is pretty expensive. He also was always buying designer clothes, and he looked just as funny in them as you were imagining. I always thought it was impolite to ask, so I never did. One day I was cooking some dinner for him and I casually asked him if he liked to cook. His response was, "I used to," but then the cops found out. Thankfully, they didn't find all the money. I almost dropped the plate I was holding at the time. I looked at him and asked, "What do you mean by that, Sanders?" He smiled with his signature mischievous grin and said, "You know exactly what I mean."
What's a dark secret you want to get off of your chest? A friend goes on and on about how many Twitch followers he has and how he's getting so big as a streamer, etc. He doesn't know that most of his followers viewers are me. He was so depressed that nobody was tuning in that I used a Google Worksheet account and a ton of aliases to spawn Twitch accounts to follow watch him. It's gotten out of control though, and he keeps trying to lord it over our friend group how many viewers followers. Not sure how to proceed, because he was pretty depressed before I created all the followers and worry he'll get depressed again if I slowly stop doing it. I have had the same best friend since I was 16. We met in high school. When we turned 19 she met her husband. I quickly became closer to him than my best friend. We developed a deep brother-sister type bond. My best friend has cognitive disabilities and anxiety, so I would vent a lot to him because he was just easier to talk to. This past October he died of AML leukemia. I stepped up and helped my best friend through the transition. I planned a memorial service, paid for the cremation, was reimbursed after life insurance processed, and was basically a rock. But internally I am completely gutted. I do not trust easily, and he was one of the very few people I felt I could tell anything to. The loss is hard for me and I have nowhere to go with the pain because the one person I would talk to about it is him, and he's dead. I don't want to say these things to my best friend because it drags up so much for her. She is hurting deeply and I'm trying to be strong for her. It's a difficult mix to deal with.
After 13 years clean and 8 years of marriage, I did heroin 3 weeks ago and almost came close to fully relapsing. I was a heroin addict in the Lower East Side of Manhattan in the 1990s as a teen. I got clean at 21 years old after years of abuse. I got married at 26 to my amazing and beautiful wife. She knows I was an addict. I spent all these years not even really thinking that much about the concept of relapsing. It had been so long. I still thought about it, but with marriage and my kids and everything, the thought of it was just so ridiculously out of sight to even consider trying it again. 3 weeks ago, it was my friend's birthday. He is 4 years younger than me, so of course he wants to go to some cool hip sketchy bar/club thing in Bushwick. I got intoxicated, really intoxicated. I hadn't really drank much at all in the past few years, so my tolerance was way lower than expected. There was a dealer outside and a few other junkies nearby. I don't even fully remember what happened. I just remember going with them, abandoning my friend at the bar. It was like 1 a.m. anyways, and going to some apartment and shooting up. I spent the night there, then all the way until noon the next day. I had 10 missed calls. I panicked when I came out of my daze. I told my wife I had gotten way too intoxicated and was puking and my phone was out of battery, so I stayed at Charlie's house. She was disappointed I didn't tell her, but also thought it was funny because she used to tease me for not being able to handle my liquor. This was a "I told you so" moment. She had told me not to drink too much before I went to the bar. She wasn't even in New York. She was at a summer house with the kids in Massachusetts. I spent the next 4 days until they got back just riddled with anxiety, urges to get more heroin, horrific mind zaps. I don't even know what to call them. It was, in some ways, worse than my withdrawal symptoms when I first was an addict. Not because of the physical feeling, but the horrible mental feeling of what I was possibly giving up, my wife and kids. I wanted to effing get more so badly. I left my house to find heroin 4 effing times. 4 times, I gave up to get more, but wasn't able to find any and snapped back to reality and went back home. I still thank effing God I did not somehow run into some street dealer during those 4 times. I would have absolutely done it. I feel like everything I thought about myself, that I was strong, that my addiction was behind me, that I had beat heroin. It was all gone. I am not going to say I am back at square one or anything. I am not, but I feel like something inside of me has reset. My unwavering strength against addiction was broken at the slightest temptation. I am still weak. Heroin is so much stronger than me. It's truly unbelievable how much stronger it is than me. When I was young, my aunt had cancer. She beat it. Then it came back soon after, and she beat it again. It didn't come back, and we loved how strong she was for fighting her cancer and that she had overcome it. She lived with us. I remember her feeling of strength after her 2nd year of not having cancer, her 3rd year, her 6th year. It finally felt like it was gone for good. Her thinking it's finally behind me now, it's a part of my past, and then it just effing came back. 9 years after her first diagnosis, it came back and took her. I remember her feelings and how she felt about it. So many years after she thought it had gone away. That is how I feel. Like a cancer which I thought I got rid of a decade ago just showed back up on my screening. The first 5 to 6 days after I tried it, that time outside the bar was the worst. My kids and wife have come back. The urges mostly went away the second I saw my kids. I hugged them so damn hard, and I never told my family what happened, nor will I ever. My wife never understood that side of me. She met me 5 whole years after I was clean. I just cannot have her know, ever. I won't do it again. I am planning on not drinking to excess like that again, except maybe in very specific situations like at the summer house where there is no option of substances. I mean, not like I want to get intoxicated again like that, but just in case I ever want to get loose. I am never doing that in the city again. I am still about 90% plus sure that I won't ever touch heroin again. I am still positive about it. It's just, it used to be 99% sure. That is what effing terrifies me. I said heroin is stronger than me. It is absolutely stronger than me. But the reason I won't ever do it again is that it isn't stronger than my family, my wife and kids. I don't care about how good it feels. I will not subject my wife and children to me being an addict. I would rather just unalive myself than that.
What was a good memory you had when you were in school? In high school we had a group project and this class was 90% girls, so the other 10% guys, including me, were in a group. This teacher used to kinda gang up on us with the girls, and one day she was preoccupied and we were talking about how we didn't want to be there and we should just jump out the window. This one guy scopes out the window, sticks his feet out first, give us a wink and just jumps out. Dropped probably 7 to 10 feet onto the grass and just waltzes back into class like he just came from the bathroom or something. Teacher didn't even know.
My delusional boyfriend is obsessed with Korean streamers. So I unplugged his internet in the middle of a match. My boyfriend and I have been dating for about 2 years. Before League became such a huge part of his life, our relationship was amazing. He was intelligent, sweet, thoughtful, and attractive to boot. We lived together and communicated well, and all our fights and arguments were resolved civilly without raised voices or hurtful words. I know it's naive to say so since I'm relatively wrong, but I honestly thought we were going to spend the rest of our lives together. Almost a year ago he started playing League of Legends, and I joined as well. We used to play together and have a lot of fun. I stopped because of other responsibilities, but he has recently gotten extremely invested in the game. He buys their merch, team merchandise, lots of skins, which is fine since he makes a good amount of money. What really bothers me are his delusions of going pro and his obsession with some League streamers. It started out with him really liking this one champion named Riven, constantly looking up how to play her, and talking to me about how her mechanics are superior to other champions. He watched a League of Legends Twitch streamer known for playing Riven. I didn't mind until he started talking about this person's girlfriend. He told me how famous League professional players and streamers have cute Asian girlfriends and has jokingly made comments like, "I wish I had one too, haha, it probably comes with the job." I've told him it makes me uncomfortable, and he always rebuffs me with reassurances that he was just kidding and that he loved me and was just jealous of their easy lifestyles playing video games, that's all. Yet, I always find him refreshing the couple's social media, over and over again. The girl doesn't even stream very much or post very much, and the boy fawns over every tweet or Facebook post of his. He started watching a friend of that girl who also streams, and told me to start streaming and get an all K-pop sponsorship just like her for easy money. Lately, he just watches any Korean girl streamer, even going so far as to spend hours looking for any new girl streamers with low viewer counts to see if any of them are Korean. He started commenting that he wished he also had a cute Korean girlfriend and recently started going on rants about how Koreans were superior at video games, proven by how a Korean team had won the League World Finals for 2 years. He basically worships a Korean player named Faker and talks about him a lot as well. He tells me he really wants to try going professional in League of Legends. He seems to have deluded himself into thinking he is really good at the game just because he achieved a high ranking this year after only a year of playing. He says he would be happier with that life than his life right now and plays League for hours trying to improve and yelling at who knows what over voice communication. To be honest, I'm not as concerned about that as I am about his infatuation with streamers. I think he will snap out of his fantasy about going pro, but I'm not so sure about this Korean girl thing. Frankly, I think it's weird, obsessive, childish, and racist. He tells me he has his preferences, and that he should be allowed to play video games in his free time and follow his dreams. I always feel bad when we talk about it because somehow I end up feeling like I'm the one being possessive and controlling. Every time I bring it up, he gets extremely defensive and it's very draining. I don't want to break up over something that seems so trivial and dumb, especially because up until now our relationship has been wonderful, but I am at the end of my rope here. Update: well, I tried to have another civil conversation with him about it. While he agreed to talk to me, he queued up for another match on League of Legends and said he would talk after that one. Then when I returned an hour later, he was in the middle of another one. I left again, and I heard him screaming at his teammates again another hour later. At this point, I was tired of his bullshit. I unplugged our internet and yelled at him. I honestly think I scared him. It was a deer in the headlights look as I was screaming talk to me. I swear I could feel the flames coming out of my ears. I told him that his Riven God Shrine idol had commented on a post I made about him saying the lifestyle was not actually that easy. I told him he was not going to go professional. I looked up statistics and all of that fun stuff and he's not even that good. Then I said his comments about cute Korean girlfriends when I'm Chinese and sitting right next to him when he makes these comments really hurt me. I told him I thought he needed to get his goals back to reality and break his addiction to League since he was losing control of his responsibilities. I said I would be willing to go to counseling with him if he could just at least want to fix himself. He completely avoided everything I said about and screamed back at me for disconnecting his ranked match something provisional something I'm being a bitch to 9 other people. And, Boxbox's girlfriend, doesn't unplug his internet while he's streaming and working, does she? In the middle of his tirade, I just burst out laughing. It was suddenly so ridiculous to me, that he could miss the mark so totally and completely. He then proceeded to call me a heartless beach for suddenly cackling while he was moaning about how he was going to get reported. When he was done I told him we were over. My parents came over to help me pack all of my things and leave. The entire time he just glowered at me. As I was leaving he told me he was glad, and that he always liked Korean girls better anyway. A few weeks later, he texted me a long apology, groveling for forgiveness and admitting that he'd seen the light and realized it was a delusional fantasy and Korean girls weren't even that pretty anyway. I won the $25 bet with my friend that he was going to come crawling back and then deleted his contact on my phone, and that was that. My husband says he needs submission and respect even though I provide for the family. Until I had enough. My husband and I fought today. We were driving home from somewhere with the kids and he stopped on a roadside to pee in an open field. Then our daughter chimed in, "Is Dad peeing? Can I pee too?" She's 7, and she has a wide pee spray, so I have a specific technique that I do that involves carrying her so she doesn't get pee on her feet and ankles. My husband is well aware of this. In fact, I reminded him of it just last week. The same scenario happened then. He just let her squat in some tall grass. I raised concerns about this because I'm a bit of a germaphobe. What if there is a dog pee in there? And her pee got all over her legs and ankles, so we got pee all over the car rug as well. I asked him if he ever saw me assist her when she's peeing. He said yes. I asked if it's okay that from now on assist her like I do, and he said yes. That was last week. Today, he made her squat down twice to pee. Once in the morning, another tonight. I let that slide in the morning, but in the evening, I had to speak up. I asked, "Why didn't you do what I taught you?" His response? "Because you have an attitude." Mind you, I was running after the kids the whole day. When we were getting ready in the morning, all he did was to prepare himself, while I prepare for 3 people. At lunch, he ate his meal in silence while I fed 3 people. He did everything he wanted to do today like he was just tagging along and had no responsibility but to drive. So, when I said that our daughter would like to pee as well, he said that my command has an attitude, so he lost his interest to do what he's told. I felt mad. I told him tonight that when things aren't done the way I instruct them to be done, they become collateral chores again for me later. Like after our daughter pee, I had to find a place to wash because pee is all over her legs. If only it had been obeyed, she would have just had to wipe her hua with a feminine wipe and we'd be done. Of course, the floodgates were opened and everything just poured out. There is a distribution of labor that we should have indoors. But he hasn't been to his weight over the last few months. I have been silently, and without complaint, doing the chores that are supposedly his. For context, he's a doctor but still waiting for residency to start. He's been on a time off since July of this year, so he's just home. I work from home full time, and I support our household financially 100%. I also have the lion's share of household duties as well as parenting. Then because I didn't use the right tone, he didn't want to do what I said, and at the expense of our daughter's hygiene. It was beyond me. He asked why I'm mad. I say it's not one isolated thing. It's an accumulated reaction to all the things you don't do or the things you half-ass. Whereas when I am being ordered, I always come through. Sometimes even if they are not being ordered, I just do it. Because I anticipate their needs and fulfill them to my high capacity. I once told him that I was feeling like a slave. He just laughs and thinks it's a joke. I asked him tonight, what could I have done differently for him to do what I ask? His answer blew my mind. He says submission and respect. I honestly don't know what to do with that answer. As a wife, running on empty, literally living my life for them and doing everything I can to give them a comfortable home, a car, a clean house, food, utilities, literally everything, even supporting him through med school, do I lack the submission and respect? He said that he didn't like it when I'm angry. I said I'm not angry when I explained last week why she can't squat. He said, because I had a tone with attitude. And we're back to square one. I told him all the things I've done for him, and how I'm asking for just one thing. He said, "Are you calculating all the things you do in this house?" I said yes. I mean, because I want fairness. Because I also deserve to have a partner who works his ass off for me and my child the way that I do. His argument is that my standards for hygiene and cleanliness are too high and don't match his lower standards. So I asked him to take a look around our house and to tell me that it's okay for me to lower my standards to meet his. He said no. So now, I'm so confused. He can't meet my standards, but I still can't lower the standard of how I clean the house. It's like saying I like how clean everything is, but I'm too lazy to do it myself, so I would prefer you do it all. Absolute manchild. The argument ended with him saying, "Can you just get to your point? I have something else to do." Of course. There's always something more important than a resentful wife who's starting to hate you. I said I just didn't mind and I retreated upstairs. Sure, some of you might say it was a small thing for me to grow up with. But it's not just the peeing thing. It's everything. Everything I ask is either left undone or it's done to a very low standard. But he always exports the very best of me every day. All give and no gain. He can't even do a simple command just because I have an attitude. Whereas I didn't bother him throughout the day, I took care of everything silently while he enjoyed his day. I'm just so tired of marriage. Don't marry a deadbeat, it will drain the life out of you and he will come up with insane reasons why it was your fault all along.
Do you want to confess that no one else in your real life knows? I did a 2-hour online test for college and we had to stay on camera for the whole 2 hours until everyone was done. The problem was I shit myself half an hour into the test and sat in my own shit, not allowed to move, and if I did move everyone would see I shit myself. So I waited until everyone was done and got marks done and could turn off the cameras. I got 100% in the test. In my group of friends consisting of couples in deep relationships, I'm the only single guy. In fact, I don't think I've been in a committed relationship for more than 2 weeks. The idea of being part of a couple has always sounded exhausting, and it was something I never really worried about rushing into. I didn't truly realize how lonely I've been until one night playing beer pong. When I was on the same team with one of the ladies, she hugged me after I won the game for us. It didn't occur to me that since leaving home for college, those types of physical gestures that brought me comfort as a kid weren't always there for me anymore as an adult.
Why did that one kid get expelled? Thought he was funny and decided to grab the student resource officer's gun. Our SRO also happened to be part of SWAT. He did this as we all left at the end of the day, in a crowded hall. I remember this vividly over 20 years later. This was also post-Columbine by like a month. Kid got slammed into a wall and put in cuffs. Arrested and expelled immediately. Should I disclose to her that I think she's stupid? Hi everyone. So, I recently had a conversation with a lady about dog sitting for her. She suggested that I visit her and spend time with her dogs to see how we would get along. She did mention that her dogs are sensitive. However, when I went to meet them, my suspicions were confirmed. I encountered an owner who seemed to have no control over their own life, as well as no control over their dogs. The owner overfeeds one of the dogs and treats him poorly, making him appear like a monster. She prevents him from interacting with anyone, gives him medication for anxiety, and neglects his emotional needs. On the other hand, the other dog is treated like a queen and can do no wrong. During our walk together, I actually connected with the dog that the owner neglects. Unfortunately, she disagreed with my observations and claimed that he can only be trained using positive reinforcement, which she doesn't seem to provide at all. The owner even mentioned that she tried to give the dog away in the past, but it didn't work out. Her chosen training method doesn't seem effective, and she's not consistent with it either. I tried to treat the dog well and control his leash because he lacked discipline, but she became upset when I did so. The owner allows him to pull her in any direction he wants during walks, and claims that he almost bit someone else. Throughout our interactions, the owner was rude and argumentative. Towards the end, she seemed to calm down a little and became nicer to me. She even agreed that I could dog sit for her on the dates we discussed. However, a few days later, she texted me saying that she decided to go with another person. During our conversation, I had also inquired about potentially adopting the neglected dog. However, the owner expressed no interest, believing that I have ulterior motives due to my desire to use leash control for discipline. She strongly believes that any form of physical punishment is violence, and she considers violence to be evil. I didn't engage in a big argument, but I tried to explain that despite our differing methods, my intentions are positive. Unfortunately, she didn't agree and refused to let the dog go. Now, I'm left uncertain about what to do. Should I just let go? It really bothers me to see the dog being treated this way. The time I accidentally hit a cop. As I strolled down the street, eagerly heading to the nearest convenience store to treat myself to my weekly blue raspberry slushie, an unexpected hand gripped my shoulder. Naturally my instincts kicked in and I spun around, flinging my arm out in self-defense. Now keep in mind I'm a pretty short woman, just reaching 5'2" and living alone in a big city, so I make it a priority to take defense classes at least 2 times a week and exercise regularly. Growing up with a single mom and all sisters, let's just say I developed a pretty guarded and independent nature, especially in public. So imagine my horror when I see a police officer cradling his cheek. I didn't realize at the time that my hand was open and I definitely didn't mean to slap anybody, I was just hoping to create some distance. My heart started to immediately race and I started spewing off apologies because I know he could arrest me right now if he wanted to. Thankfully the cop was surprisingly chill about it and even joked how he hadn't gotten slapped that hard in a while. Now for the reason he grabbed my shoulder, turns out he was returning my wallet. Of course my hands immediately go to my bag and yup, there's a freaking hole in it. My boyfriend laid his hands on me in an argument and now I'm stuck. I found out my boyfriend was talking to another girl, a 30-year-old coworker of his on Snapchat. While he slept I went through his phone and saw some messages between them. The first was from December 2020 that had my boyfriend stating I miss you my little cutie 20. To which she responded, I miss you too master 20. The co-worker in question was black, so seeing that made me grossed out as well as heartbroken. I confronted him and his excuses were that he was just being nice and that's why he was sending kisses and called her cutie. He says the reason she misses him is because he was off the last 4 days from work. I feel so betrayed and hurt and like he was definitely doing something, but I just don't want to believe it. I can hardly come to terms with the fact that from what I saw, it does feel like flirting to me. We've been together for 4 years. We've just moved an hour away from where we lived so I could go to university, which meant I uprooted our whole lives pretty much. I'm just so heartbroken. I feel sick, I feel angry, I feel horrible about myself and part of me feels like it's all my fault. I suffer from depression and anxiety which can make me a pretty crappy person sometimes. With the stress of moving and starting university I've been up and down and we've had our arguments but I thought we were doing okay most days. The situation escalated even worse as I brought up the same thing yet again the next day and he refused to talk to me and instead went out to a pub with his friends. He came back and I was watching TV having spent the last few hours crying. He started an argument but I refused to back down. Even though he was intoxicated I did not feel physically threatened. That was until he laid his hands on me and yelled at me to go to my room and insisted on sleeping on the couch. It's now the next day and I'm so terrified I just want out.
My husband refused to prepare dinner because I needed to act more like a proper woman and called me a failure as a mother, so I crushed his ego by saying he's too broke to be sexist. So, my husband comes from a traditional family. Mom's a som, father was the sole provider. I come from the opposite, My mother pretty much forbade me from ever being financially dependent on a man and drilled that into me early on. My husband worked hard to unlearn the values he saw replicated at home. He, often more than, pulled his weight at home and was an engaged and present father and a genuine partner. The one thing that grinds my gears is how much weight he puts on the opinions of his family. We all want our parents to be proud of us, but this is too much. My in-laws are staying with us for 2 weeks. Our usual mo is, I prep breakfast, we all eat lunch at work/school, and my husband makes dinner. We have a cleaner, but she's on holiday, so in the meantime, we're DIYing the cleaning where it's down to everyone to keep their space clean and common spaces we all clean. This is how we've always done it, and it works. My in-laws hate that I'm one of those modern women. They hate that I work, that I don't find my purpose in being a wife and mother, and that my husband pulls his weight at home. We spoke frankly early on, where I established my boundaries and told them I wouldn't be chastised about how I live in my home. When I am a guest in their home, I accommodate their ways and play the dill they wish I were. They have, for the most part, respected this. I got home yesterday after work tired and starving. I typically get home at 6, and we eat at 7. I said quick hellos and ran up for a pre-dinner shower. When I came down, I went to the kitchen to help set up for dinner and found nothing ready. I asked my husband about it, but he wouldn't look at me, and his mother answered that he hadn't cooked anything. She told me I needed to do my duty as a wife and cook for my family. My coward of a husband still wasn't looking at me. I just walked away and ordered a takeaway. I dished up for me and my kids, and we ate at the table. My husband and his parents served themselves and joined us. My mother-in-law was still going on about what was wrong with me and why I was a failure. I asked my husband if he had anything to say. He said his mother had a point and it wouldn't hurt if I acted more like a proper woman and took better care of my home and children. He said tradition was tradition for a reason, and it was insulting that I thought I was too good for how he was raised. This is where I might be the asshole. I told him tradition wouldn't allow a man on $35K to support a family of 5, and he was too broke to be so sexist. He looked hurt, and I saw tears welling in his eyes. He excused himself from the table. I regret saying this in front of our children, but him saying that to me after I bust my ass to clean up his mess, on top of having to deal with his parents, was too much for me. Am I the a-hole?
Have you ever applauded an act of vigilante justice? I was at work when I got a call from my mother who was crying and sobbing. I didn't know what was wrong, but I got home 10 minutes later. Our home was set up on a bank across from the city park and the grade school. My parents lived in an apartment over the garage. And my mother was standing outside my kitchen door looking down crying. So I got her calmed down and she kept saying, "They arrested your father, they arrested your father." About that time a police cruiser pulled up. I was still trying to figure out what happened when my father crawled out of the back seat. The policeman explained he was just bringing him home. And thanked him for his service. He and my mother had seen 5 big gangbangers try and steal a bicycle from a boy that looked to be about 12 years old. A car pulled up and a man got out and tried to intervene and the 5 chased him back to his car he was trying to get in the trunk. My dad heard him yell he was an off-duty policeman as the 5 started to beat him up. My 76-year-old father ran down the stairs through the garage, grabbed a baseball bat and started beating on them. He was chasing them up the street swinging every time he got close. Police crews picked him up and they actually caught them. They all elected to be tried separately, so 5 times my father went down to testify only to have each of them change their plea right before the trial. People of Reddit, what's the situation that you thought to yourself, yeah, this is my all-time low? When I went to my ex-wife's parents to plead for help dealing with their gambling-addicted daughter. Poured my guts out explaining that if we didn't get help for her soon we'd lose the only house our 3 sons have ever known. Over the last year we were together I stopped counting her losses once I hit $100,000. Casino apps are no joke. Anyway, her parents explained they had no idea and would step in ASAP. 2 weeks later my ex and her family got together over the weekend. They didn't tell me anything other than keep an eye on the boys. No problem, figured it was an intervention. Nope. They all went to the casino together. I filed 2 months later after realizing I could secure the house for my kids. When I got in my car and my gut was so big that even with the seat as far back as it could go, it would dig into the steering wheel. I had to suck in my gut before making turns. Heaviest I'd been in my life, 100 pounds down from that weight though. Still going strong. I pawned my wedding ring to get money to feed my pill addiction. It opened my eyes though and I ended up cleaning up after a few more months and getting my ring back. My wife worked her ass off to buy me that ring and I was such an addicted piece of S that I pawned it for a fix. Glad that moment finally woke me up though. 11 years clean now. My entitled brother and his horrible wife made fun of my beautiful wife for being stressed about taking care of a baby. When I defended her he went crying to mommy and got kicked out. My wife and I had a baby 4 months ago and things have been rough. We've spent many nights awake with a screaming baby and we're still getting used to our new lifestyle. My wife is suffering the most during this time. She's struggling with postpartum depression and is more exhausted than I am because realistically, she's the one doing all the heavy work. She has to be ready to go when the baby wants to eat since she breastfeeds. She's had a lot of breakdowns and can't really take care of the baby for one more day. It was heartbreaking to see, so I called off work for a while and gave her a day to herself so that I could take care of the baby. I gave her my card and told her to do what she needs to do for herself. She left at the first sight of freedom, which really put things into perspective for me. It made me realize I could be doing more because she literally pushed a baby out of her body. So, when she got back, I was going to tell her that she needs to rest as long as it takes and I was going to do everything from now on. However, I still need to get back to work after my leave, so this solution wasn't entirely perfect, but I know it's what she needs right now. That same day she was out, my brother and his wife came over for a visit. They asked where she was, to which I said she was out doing her own things. Then, they asked why I was babysitting the baby. I told them it wasn't babysitting when it's my own child, and I was giving my wife some time to herself. My sister-in-law scoffed at me, said I married a bad female, and that my wife was going to turn out to be a bad mom. She said she should be home like a good mom. I just stood there wondering what gave her the confidence to say all of this. She doesn't have kids of her own, so she has no idea how tough parenting is. As for my brother, he laughed and agreed, saying that my wife was using me to take a day off from being a mom, and that taking care of a baby is easy. I got pissed at him and told him, of course it'd be easy for you, because you live with mom so you could just dump the baby on her. What I didn't understand though was how comfortable they felt speaking ill of my wife to me, her literal husband. Did they think I was going to agree with them? Trash talk my wife with them? Hell no. My brother and his wife got pissed at me though, and started yelling that I couldn't talk to them that way and I had no idea what they were going through. I had enough of them, so I kicked them out and told them to never come back unless they apologized. My wife arrived later that night and she looked so happy. She had gone shopping and bought clothes for the baby, as well as a present for me. She was really thoughtful, and I love that even on her day out, she still thought of us. I didn't want to stress her out anymore, so I didn't tell her. My mom ended up calling me, saying she agreed with me, but told me I was a bit harsh for what I said to him. I told her I was only defending my wife and I didn't care how he felt after he talked really bad about her. She asked what I meant by that because, as it turns out, my brother only told her that I kicked him out for saying I was babysitting my kid. I gave her the full story and needless to say mom was pissed. Our mom was a single mother who raised both my brother and I, so she didn't appreciate my brother's comments. Next thing I knew, she was telling him and his wife that they had 30 days to pack up and leave. My brother called and went off on me for apparently making him and his wife homeless. I just hung up because I wasn't going to deal with him anymore. People who get offended by hearing cuss words, why? I'm asking because me and a few coworkers were having a quiet conversation around the side of a building, away from any entryway, and I referred to a D9 that almost backed into me as a big son of a beach. An older couple that had parked on the side of the building was walking by. I didn't see them or else I would have used different language, and they gasped and the lady said excuse me, while physically flinching like I had struck them. Personally, I cuss a lot when I'm with people who also do the same, but I don't intentionally do it around random people, never loudly, and especially not around children. I don't see anything wrong with it, I just generally try to respect the fact that people don't like to hear it, but I also don't think words warrant a reaction like the one I got. It's happened a few times, and I just don't understand why. My parents' poly partner tries to parent me. My parents became poly 4 years ago. They came to me and explained what it meant to be that. They've been dating the same person, Madison, for the past 3 years and she moved in with us 2 years ago. She's overall an okay person, but she's very much into being some kind of cool mom, which she will never be for me. My parents' relationship with Madison is very serious. Both of my families know her and while not everyone accepts her as a real part of their marriage, they're okay with her too. For me, she's more like a roommate my parents love rather than a parent figure or someone I have to listen to. My dad's is okay with her trying to discipline me, but my mom is not. Well, 2 days ago my boyfriend walked me home and I invited him to have a piece of cake since my mom's birthday was the day before and he couldn't come. He said yes and we went inside and that's honestly everything we did. Madison came an hour after and we were still in the kitchen, eating and watching TikTok together. I had my head on his shoulder and we were just chilling. She saw us and began to act very weird. She said hi and drank a glass of water, but after 10 minutes she just stood there pretending to look at her phone, but it was pretty obvious she was watching us. My boyfriend felt uncomfortable and he said his goodbyes. When Madison and I were left alone, she approached me saying it wasn't okay for me to be alone with a boy at 16 and that she would appreciate it if I don't do it again. I was honestly shocked. My parents know my boyfriend pretty well and more than that, they know me, and I would never betray their trust by doing something I'm not allowed yet just because I was alone. She wanted to keep talking but I cut her off and said that she had no right to try to give me the talk and she wasn't my parent in any form to try to parent me or give me unsolicited advice. She said she was just trying to help me, but I said she better not and any concern she had, she could talk it to my real parents and if they see it fit, they will talk to me, but just because she was dating them both didn't make her mommy too and I went to my room. This morning, while my dad drove me to school, he said Madison talked to both of them and my mom decided she overstepped, but that he agreed with her and he would appreciate a heads up when my boyfriend and I are alone and that if it was okay for me, I could apologize, but I said I didn't feel like it and he said he was disappointed. Update: my parents' poly partner tries to parent me. My mom got home and I asked my dad and her if we could talk. Madison was at the gym so we just sat on the couch and I was honest. I told my mom what my dad had said in the morning ride and I confessed to my dad that it was unfair that just because Madison thought that it was improper of us to be alone in the house he suddenly changed the game. I've always been completely honest with them, and I reminded them so. I said that, as soon as we got home, I sent them a text telling them that I was already here and that my boyfriend was over, and he said nothing. I also told them that I didn't feel comfortable with Madison living here and that maybe, I never was, but I was so young to understand what it really meant to have poly parents and while I don't really care for their romantic life, ever since Madison snitched on me, it had made me feel like walking over eggshells in my own house and that my dad saying he was disappointed, felt like Madison matters more than me in the house. I've always been a loner, always. I spend time with my parents, yes, but I love to be alone in my room, In the kitchen, in the living room doing my own stuff, I've never had to hide for anything. But Madison proved that whatever she doesn't like or she thinks I shouldn't be doing, she'll spy and tell, and it wasn't fair, because while Madison is nothing to me and her opinion doesn't matter, I've proved to them that I can be trusted and that I don't do things like that behind their back. While saying that, my voice cracked, and my dad came to my side and hugged me, saying that he was so sorry and that I was right. He apologized again for the way he acted in the car and that he should have never said he was disappointed because he wasn't, that he couldn't have asked for a better kid and that he felt so bad for hurting me to the point I had to talk to them alone. He hugged me and my mom just looked at him and said they had to talk too. Madison, alone, because she has said countless of times that she doesn't appreciate her giving advice or thinking she was some kind of responsibility over me. She also said that I never, ever have to walk on eggshells here because this is my house and will forever be my house, and if I didn't act shamefully, then I don't have to be ashamed, and gave me a kiss on the forehead. She asked me to call my boyfriend so they could apologize to him too, and gave us some money to go to Starbucks for a few hours, and so we did. I honestly don't know everything that happened between them and Madison, but my dad said that he was tired of having to please to women in his life and that whatever right he did for mom was a wrong for Madison and vice versa, and that for a while, he has wanted to break that relationship but wasn't sure if my mom wanted to because, despite not agreeing in parenting choices, my mom loved her a lot and it showed. But my mom said she was done too, and they will be attending couples counseling and see where it gets them. They also gave Madison 2 weeks to move out, but she was already packing when I got home and she went to stay with her parents. She glared at me once and apart from that, didn't even look at me again. So I guess there's that.
I made my daughter feel awful for cleaning. I married my husband 9 years ago, and with him, I got a bonus child, 14-year Steph. She's a very sweet kid and we get along really well, always have. The only issue is that she often goes into our room to clean or organize despite being told not to, and then loses a bunch of our stuff because she can't remember where she's put it. I've asked her to stop so many times and she will apologize and say she can't help it. Recently she's been doing the same thing with the baby's nursery. So I had the baby 1.5 weeks ago. We had the nursery set up perfectly. All diapers and diapers wipes on the changing table. All of her clothes were arranged by size in the closet, etc. On day 2 of being home, I went into the nursery and found it completely rearranged. I had just gotten back from the baby appointment. I couldn't find the diapers anywhere. My breast pump wasn't where I left it. I immediately called the school and told them to put Steph on the phone, and she had to tell me where everything was, and I told her at this point that she wasn't to rearrange the nursery at all and that if she did it again, more drastic measures would have to be taken. Well, yesterday I went to visit my mom for the day, and when I got home, I was immediately met with more organizing. All of the baby's clothes were now mixed in sizes and arranged by colors, and all tags had been removed, which I hadn't removed on purpose. Her bassinet was moved to the other side of the room, her diapers were put in her bassinet and taken out of the changing table, and my breast pump and rocker was now moved to the opposite side, where there's not even a plug in, so I can't use it there. I immediately called my husband in and said I told her more drastic measures would be taken if she came into this room and messed stuff up again. She's not going to the homecoming dance. Husband agrees with me and tells her. She's now guilt-tripping me because I know how she is and knows. She can't help it. Her mom is now saying I'm ignorant and that she's still going, it's not her weekend so she has no say, and that I need to tone it down because I'm casting judgment on OCD behavior. ETA, she has been evaluated by 3 separate specialists. They all say she doesn't have OCD and that she just has control issues. They said that her behaviors are linked to control because it's only other people's space that she is like this with. Her room is a complete mess and always has been, and she can never locate anything of her own, but she refuses to clean her room. Specialists say it's her way of controlling something around her and have routed it to her mom basically abandoning her. She gave up custody years ago and only gets 1 weekend a month because that's all she wants.
Those who have been to a ruined wedding, what happened? A coworker was at one of best friend's wedding. There were very specific rules about the food, no nuts. There were a couple people there, including the maid of honor, who were severely allergic. The venue served something that had nuts. Maid of honor went anaphylactic. EpiPen was not effective, and she died on the way to the hospital. Needless to say, there are lawsuits abound. We attended a wedding for family member who didn't have a lot of money. It was hosted at an inexpensive venue but was nice. My heart broke when only a third of the people invited showed up. You could see the hurt in the couple's face. They came up to our table and said, "Do you have any friends in city?" We lived an hour away. They had all this food for 100 people but only 30 guests. They were willing to have complete strangers come down just so their money and food wouldn't go to waste. We hadn't handed over our card with cash inside yet, so my husband hit the ATM and added another $100.
My boyfriend is trying to become a sexy TikTok chef and it's ruining our relationship. I literally cannot believe that this is the same exact man I started dating 2 years ago. I don't even recognize this fame-hungry weirdo who would do anything for a couple of views. My boyfriend has always told me about how he's always wanted to become a sort of influencer. When he mentioned this previously, I thought it might be cool since he has a range of different hobbies. My boyfriend is super handy and knows a lot about fixing things around the house, and he used to work as a mechanic. I once suggested to him that he could make handyman tips type videos since I see them go viral here and there, and it's a type of content that's really widely useful. But my boyfriend said that this idea was sort of lame and explained to me that in order to get viral and gain clout he needed to have some sort of special brand of unique content. I gave up helping him figure it out, and he didn't mention his influencer dreams for a couple of months. That was until he decided to totally blindside me out of nowhere one day. About 3 weeks ago, he came home out of nowhere and told me he had quit his job to pursue his career in social media. We split the bills 50-50, and so of course I was wondering how he expected to afford living expenses without a job. I explained to him that I thought he was being a little unrealistic by straight up quitting his job before he had any income through influencing at all, and he reassured me that he had enough savings to take a long break from working. Honesty, I thought he was being an immature idiot, with the expectations of a teenager, but I loved him still and I wanted to be supportive. Anyways, for the next couple of weeks he was trying out different types of content. He was making a lot of mukbang videos and buying enormous amounts of food, but none of those videos were doing very well. My boyfriend seems to be getting frustrated at the lack of views and engagement on his channels, and that's when he has switched to making a new type of weird, gross content, in my eyes at least. If you've ever seen those sexy chef pages, where men will cook a meal but make the process super intimate by touching and handling the food in an intimate way, that is the type of content my genius boyfriend has decided to start making. I thought it was the most cringy, awkward thing I had ever seen. Online, those videos might look hot or whatever, but to watch someone use food like that in real life is just uncomfortable. I don't think it looks hot or attractive at all, but as soon as he started posting these videos his account started blowing up. He had one video go viral, and he almost cried of happiness to me about how he had made it. I wanted to act happy for him, but I could barely sit through one of his videos. I just can't get over the weirdness of it all. He's touching food and acting all intimate, and I just can't believe this is the content he quit his job to make. Every day when I come home, there's my boyfriend in the kitchen, filming himself fingering a melon or whatever. He also has begun wasting a lot of food since he destroys perfectly good food to get the perfect take. I truly don't know how he's affording all this food with just his savings. It's like he's pouring his money down the drain. He's changing into some cloud-obsessed freak, and he feels more like a stranger to me every day. Yet this week he crossed a line, and I don't see how I could forgive him anytime soon. I was on his page looking at his recent videos, when I found him comment after comment from him flirting with his female audience. I wanted to be sick. The conversations were so perverted, and I felt like I was truly losing the man I once loved, all to the lure of internet fame.